Okay. Hello, everybody. Uh, Dear distinguished member of the EL board, Mr. Miloš Hodun, dear speakers, dear participants, dear partners, guests, dear liberal friends. On behalf of ZAO 14, it's indeed my honor and great privilege to welcome you all at our last international event in 2022. We are honestly delighted to have you all here at today's event, organized in cooperation with our great partner, European Liberal Forum, and our distinguished partners, Friedrich Neumann Foundation and University of Ljubljana. ZAO 14, as a non-profit civil society and a full member of the European Liberal Forum, aims to promote social liberal ideas, and today's event is focused on being green and smart after the COVID-19 pandemic, with some new circumstances emerge, like energy crisis, forthcoming recession, war in Ukraine, inflation, and so on. Actually, why being green and being smart is so important nowadays? Since Commission President von der Leyen proclaimed the European Green Deal as the EU blueprints for transforming our economy and society in her first address, it has provided an important compass for EU action. Its vision and framework have guided the pandemic recovery and led to initiatives like already mentioned before at our workshop, Repower EU, which aims to promote energy savings and the fast deployment of renewables in reaction to the war in Ukraine. As many new European households slip into energy poverty for the first time, primarily due to our reliance on primarily Russian fossil fuels, maintaining public support for the goals of the Green Deal is crucial. Accordingly, the latest Eurobarometer confirmed that climate change remains a top public concern, albeit now complemented by the cost of living, energy supplies, and economy. But as this summer of heat waves, fires, droughts has shown, the climate crisis is not waiting for us to fix first the rest. All of these challenges must be tackled simultaneously. As rightly recognized by the EU Commission, the root cause of the current energy crisis is our dependency on the fossil fuels. Cutting our reliance on coal, oil, gas by firstly enhancing energy saving, efficiency, and secondly accelerating the rollout of the renewables is the only viable solution. It is also necessary to recognize the need for immediate support for households at the risk of poverty and the companies worst affected by the soaring electricity and gas prices. The proposed cap on the revenues of electricity companies offers an attractive way to provide such relief, as it will not undermine the initiative to cut back consumption. However, we cannot keep driving on the same road by massively subsidizing fossil fuels. A continuation of the status quo will not just harm the climate, but also damage European public finances and entrench our dependency in imports from authoritarian regimes like from Russia. Member states should take this message to heart as they aim to shield consumers from the effects of the energy crisis. National policy aimed at reducing electricity and gas bills may appear to provide immediate relief, but are actually effectively subsidize energy consumption and accelerating the crisis. Member states must take a coordinated effort to stop such counterproductive measures and clear the way for a clean, affordable, and secure energy future in Europe. On the other hand, to be smart, digital society is a precondition. Digital technologies have provided themselves to be essential for society and citizens during the COVID-19 crisis. As we retreat back into our homes and away from offices, schools, restaurants, and large gatherings, digital solutions kept us in touch with what we matter. They are no longer simply nice to have. In this respect, the unprecedented common 750 billion stimulus package and new EU budget framework for 2021-2027 presents a historic opportunity for the euro. There is a strong consensus that investment in digital technologies and also green transition, so-called double transition, must be an important pillar for the recovery. In fact, in accordance with the European regulation, established the Recovery and Resilience Fund facility, member states should provide at least 37% of funds available in their recovery resilience plan for achieving the climate targets and at least 20% for achieving the digital targets. In this context, we are very proud to have opportunity to be a leading partner in our forthcoming publication titled The Road to a Smart and Sustainable European Union, which will be presented later by the authors and will serve as a starting point for the roundtable later today, together, of course, with the workshop which was already previously conducted earlier today. So today's international event is bringing together some prominent speakers, researchers, consultants to identify the key challenges and opportunities for the select EU member states. They will present some case studies examining smart and green challenges in the EU, identifying some good practices and scalable liberal solutions. Dear colleagues, dear guests, on behalf of Zavod 14 and our partners, let me wish you an interesting and fruitful discussion and hope to meet you again at our next events next year. And now I would kindly give the floor to our prominent guest from European Liberal Forum, Mr. Miloš Hodun, who also represents our partner, our good member of the European Liberal Forum, Project Polska Association. So, Mr. Hodun, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alexander, and greetings from Warsaw. It's a great pleasure to be with you here today, and I would like to give you a warm welcome on behalf of the Board of Directors of the European Liberal Forum and on behalf of the European Liberal Forum as such, as the entire organization. For those of you who have not met ELF before, I would like to only say that European Liberal Forum is the official think tank and the foundation of the ALDE party based in Brussels. But we are very proud of being a member-driven association, a foundation that works all over Europe with around 50 member organizations. And proudly, Zavod 14 is one of them who is developing projects in Slovenia, but not only in Slovenia, and definitely projects on the European level and with the European scope. And thank you so much, Zavod 14, but also thank you so much, and the University of Ljubljana. University is very close to heart because of my past experience with the university for hosting this event on such an important topic. And Alexander has already said a lot about why this topic is important, and he also touched upon something that I would like to stress, is the fact that these days, when we are talking about more sustainable Europe, we're definitely talking also about more secure Europe. And obviously here in Warsaw, when I'm sitting now, we can see it very closely. I also believe that this is something that the entire European see, that the more sustainable European Union, the more sustainable member states, and the more sustainable cities we have, the more secure we are. And of course, all that is in context of the inhumane and brutal aggression of Russia in Ukraine. So this is the topic of sustainability, the topic of being smart is not only important because of this great goal of combating climate change, but all right now we have this trying to be immune against Russia's threat in energy, in trying to be as independent as we can as Europe and as member state in the European Union. For us, in the European Liberal Forum, topic of climate change, energy is extremely important, in particular from the angle of technology and innovation. And this is why we're very happy that this event is happening today. If you'd like to learn more about activities and publications connected to the topic, I would like to encourage you to visit our website, where everything we produce and publish is available for free to download. So just to finish it up, I would like to say that a smarter Europe is not only a more sustainable Europe, but once again, is also a more secure Europe. I would like to wish us all a very fruitful discussion and enjoy the event. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miloš. And now I would like to give the floor to our moderator, Nina. The floor is yours.
Okay. Welcome back to those who already warmed up at our workshop, and warm welcome also to those who joined us now. So we are continuing our event with the presentations of 8 academic papers. And I would like to give some instructions first. Each presentation should take 10 minutes. And if anybody has questions, please put them in chat and we will answer them after all presentations are done. So I would firstly like to invite our colleague from the neighboring faculty, School of Economics and Business of University of Ljubljana. Rok Spruk is assistant professor. His main topics are empirical political economy, methods of causal inference, and economic history. So Rok, I would kindly invite you to do the first presentation. Welcome to our event.
Okay, hello everybody, and thank you very much, Nina, for a kind introduction. Now, may I kindly ask you to enable me to participate in screen sharing, because at the moment I cannot share the screen.
You're arranging, just a second.
Yeah, sure.
Are you?
Okay, no, not able to do it yet.
Just
a minute.
Okay. So if Nina, if I understood correctly, I have 10 minutes, right? Okay.
Okay, please try.
Yeah, now it's possible. Thank you. All right, so please kindly let me know if you can see my slides.
The slides. Please try to move them. Okay.
Okay. All right, so let me just see this. Okay, this works. Great. Okay, so hello everybody. First of all, I would like to extend, a deep appreciation to the organizers for inviting me to the webinar. Right, I'm honored to be here, right, and I hope that we'll have a very productive and constructive discussion. So, the topic of today's talk is about how to map the road towards green, sustainable, and inclusive European Union, right? And more specifically, I will try to address and tackle what I see, and my co-author Alexander, right, as distinctively important issues, right? Essentially, how to properly pursue and map the roads towards more green energy, more sustainable and more inclusive, and also at the same time, more secure European Union. Should it be through science-based approach, or what we see as a dangerous culprit, right, and also some unwarranted development that everyone should avoid, precisely, or through ideological warfare, right? So to give you a little bit of the background, right, climate change and the damage that was actually caused by environmental degradation without the loss of generality, right, can actually be seen as one of the major threats and challenges that confront not only the European Union, but possibly the planet, and of course also the subsequent transition to the European energy. And we are probably all agree what are the goals set out by the European Green Deal and its policy initiatives, to achieve climate neutrality, carbon neutrality by the year 2050 is a very ambitious, commendable, and worthwhile step, right? A special emphasis in a specific regard is paid to the issues of circular economy, building renovation, biodiversity, farming, and also innovation, right? And priorities of the European Commission are also clear, right? Not only from the official documents, also from the speeches of European commissioners, right? As well as the head of the Commission. Energy efficiency, security, development of energy sector based on renewables is an absolute priority without losing affordability, and coupled, of course, with a fully integrated and digitalized energy markets, right? But what is here in this particular respect, right? One of the major threats. Two can be identified, right? Which share the same culprits and also the same perils in the long run. One is climate change denialism, right? Which abounds. It abounds in predatory journals, it abounds on social media, it abounds in a popular debate, right? This may be described as populism, muted criticism, or anywhere else, any other way. Now, the second major peril is the so-called climate-related social activism. And unfortunately, both of these ideological movements, right, have become la raison d'être of all the anti-establishment movements behind policy circles around Europe, right? So the climate change, right, and the pursuit of carbon neutrality in our argument can be viewed in two distinctive ways. Now, we can view this as a problem that requires multiple science-based policy informative solutions based on a rigorous peer-reviewed science, right, which does not proliferate potentially dangerous, right, or internally inconsistent ideas as a policy input, right? But one can also see constructive criticism behind the climate change, right? That is all based in the principle of good faith, or, you know, as Germans like to say, Gutmachen, right? As a new ideological warfare, right? Proliferated by social activists behind the calls for climate justice, that can be Greta Thunberg or anyone else, right? That precisely is aimed, right, at attacking and eliminating all the skeptical views of public policies that are actually aimed at meeting these targets within a reasonable manner, right? Two movements have proliferated in this regard, right? One has become very popular more recently is the movement calling for the end of economic growth, or the so-called degrowth movement, right? It calls for a sanguine solution. It calls basically for an end of economic growth as a sanguine solution to all of our environmental problems and as an immediate pursuit of climate neutrality. Now, the obvious question then to ask is this feasible, right? Or is this just a mere and ideological movement, right? You know, so the populist right has said Donald Trump, right? Maybe Viktor Orban, right? And the populist left essentially invented ideological attacks. The obvious question that we should ask in order to ensure, sustain, and preserve the road towards sustainable, inclusive, safe, and secure European Union based on green energy is the following. Does the ideological warfare against constructively skeptical views grease, or does it sand the wheels of the transition towards green and climate neutral European Union? COVID-19 pandemic in the past 2 years, the brutal invasion of Ukraine by Russia can be seen as two chief external threats that jeopardize energy efficiency and energy security in European Union. We've seen many times several politicians, especially in the eastern part of European Union, be it Hungary, right, or also some outside countries like Serbia, have expressed open sympathies with Russia. And that, of course, these sympathies not only undermine the policy goals by the New Deal, they also basically put the path towards the green energy under some let's say doubt, right, on some here. So, but the question is then, if you rely on the cheerleaders of degrowth movement, right, who argue that economic growth, right, is the underlying cause of social ecological harm, right? Now, are these ideas actually sanguine? The key fallacy behind this movement is essentially, in our view, the inability to understand the causes and the effects, right, between economic growth and environmental quality. Now, maybe higher economic growth does entail higher environmental degradation, and probably no one would disagree with this assertion, right? But we should also be worried of the reverse side of causation. Now, namely, as societies become richer, more affluent, maybe they are simply better able to afford more innovation, and more innovation then, of course, allows us to reduce pollution and carbon intensity, right, and be more easy, right, for the member states to approach the targets laid out in the Green Deal in the foreseeable future, right? The primary concern here is that what I am afraid is that European climate neutrality by 2050 will go in the same direction as the agenda for a competitive Europe 2030. Now, I don't think this is what we want, right? What every policymaker, citizen, responsible citizen of any European Union member state wants is a European Union that's safe, sustainable, green, and inclusive. And the question is, of course, then how to achieve it. And the type of social activism, much like and exactly the same manner as climate change denialism, is based on the innate and quite clear disconnection in the scholarly consensus behind climate change and social sustainable development, right? How would actually the world of zero economic growth look like, right? Is the question that the pundits have actually failed to ask. Would it survive the current challenges of climate change that, again, require multiple science-based and policy-relevant solutions, right? Zero economic growth worlds would entail a world of massive hunger, high rates of poverty, massive environmental moral hazard, soaring private debt, and private indebtedness that in the total would deteriorate environmental quality. Now, the question, of course, is that from the general policy point of view, right, is a sense. Yeah.
You will slowly recap your presentation.
If I can slowly recap or
some to finish, shortened.
Okay, yeah, I will. That definitely. I'm already done, right? So what we propose, right, is are two things. Firstly, right, and this is what we urge European Commission to do, is to ignite the reliance on empirical, experimental, and peer-reviewed scrutiny of these ideas, right, to essentially rule out ideological attacks, right, on constructive skepticism, right, and to ask the relevant question, how to maximize growth through technology improvements, right, without negative externalities for the environment that jeopardizes the welfare and well-being of our and future generation. So in 5 steps, right, we propose the following, right, to the European Commission. First, diagnose the sources of carbon-intensive production and consumption. That should be a blueprint to devise appropriate economic, regulatory, and structural policies. Second step, it is necessary to provide an active monitoring of country-level progress in the pursuit of European Green Deal, right? Third of all, and this is related, EU level and member state level policies should be rigorously and peer-reviewed evaluated, not to invoke skepticism, but simply to learn the merits, the effectiveness versus ineffectiveness of particular policies in the pursuit of green transition, right? At the same time, we urge the Commission to have zero tolerance towards the proliferation of scientific work in predatory journals or journals of dubious quality, because that would undermine its integrity, to avoid what Norman Hall recently referred to as Kardashian scientists, which means active proliferation of social media, but ideas that are simply not watertight in peer-reviewed empirical scrutiny. So at the end of the day, we believe that these steps that we have briefly highlighted, briefly referred to, may allow us to achieve climate neutrality by 2050 in a more reasonable manner by relying on more scientific-based approach opposed to the ideological warfare that I think is doing much harm, not only to the credibility of the European Union, but also to the well-being of our society. And I see that I'm out of time, so thank you very much, and I look forward to the discussion.
Okay, thank you very much, Rok. You will also join us at the roundtable, so we will have
absolutely
more time to be provocative and with some explanations later on. Thank you. So we are going now to Greece. We have 2 presenters. First is coming from University of Ioannina, Nikos Chachistamolo, assistant professor in the fields of energy, environmental economics, business economics, economics of sustainable development. And the second one is Konstantinos Kounetas. We already met both at our workshop, coming from University of Patras, associate professor in energy economics, applied industrial organization, efficiency and productivity analysis. So welcome, Nikos and Konstantinos. We are looking forward to your presentation.
Apologies, I had trouble with my mic. Apologies.
No problem.
Can you see my presentation now?
Yes, you can.
Great. Thank you for having us. Our entries concerns whether the monitoring process towards sustainability is straightforward or it has multiple layers of complexity, and of course the evidence is from the EU 28 over the last 2 decades or so. So as we have mentioned already, the European Green Deal actually encapsulates a long line of policies and of energy-related policies, renewable directives, resource efficiency policies, and so on. It encapsulates all those. However, in order to monitor the progress towards the targets set by these European directives and policies, we need a monitoring process. This came when the Europe 2020 strategy was launched the last decade, and it is called the Resource Efficiency Scoreboard, which is part of the Resource Efficient Flagship Initiative, which is actually a multi-layered and systematic approach to measure resource efficiency, circular economy, and green growth in general using some indicators. We use this tier system in order to monitor whether there are sustainability discrepancies, and as the literature suggests, we are inclined to focus on convergence and divergence groups, because we have evidence that there is some club formation indicator that there are more than one heterogeneity groups coexist in the EU28. So under the presence of the ongoing energy crisis, monitoring those trends and causal effects between the variables involved in this monitoring process is of great importance. So we devise a balanced panel covering the EU28 member states for over the period 2000 through 2020. The data is collected through Eurostat. We use indicators to monitor two Sustainable Development Goals: the SDG 7, which relates to the energy to the energy efficiency and energy productivity, and to the Sustainable Development 12, which is about responsible production and consumption. And we focus on resource productivity and circular material use. At this point, I should mention that resource productivity is actually the main sustainability indicator for the case of the European Union. Later on, as Kostas will present us, we apply some convergence algorithms and some econometric models in order to uncover the relationships between the targets of each SDG. So here, before we move to these econometric models, we present some trends in sustainability. The right hand side refers to the Sustainable Development Goal for the case of Greece, while the right hand side concerns the EU28 in general. So for the case of Greece, and regarding energy productivity and energy efficiency, for the former case, we have an increasing, a steadily increasing trend in energy productivity for the period covered, while the energy efficiency, which is covered by primary and final energy consumption in Greece, declines over the period. Regarding Europe, at the right hand side, we focus on the period average. So each bullet actually refers to the period average of energy productivity in each EU member state. And and the picture we get in general is that there are some differences across. There are different patterns of energy productivity across the EU28 for the energy productivity as well as the energy efficiency. Regarding the resource productivity as well as circular material use or circularity rate for the case of Greece and Europe 2020, we see that for the case of Greece, both resource productivity and circular material use actually exhibit an increasing trend over the period of study, while the interesting an interesting finding is that for the case of resource productivity, we see, which, as I mentioned, is a sustainable development indicator. The interesting thing is that there are many we confirm that what other studies have found regarding the sustainability discrepancies between the EU 28, despite the fact that all those are subject to the same policies and directive. The same picture applies for the circular material use, where we also observe different levels of circularity across the EU 28. So in the next slide, Kostas, will you continue?
Yes, please, Nico. Thank you very much. If you can, please, Nico, press the button for the few, of course, slides that we have. I have only 3 minutes, if I can understand correctly, Nico, you don't leave me too much time. If you open now, the European Sustainable Development Report for 2021, you will see 4 key points. The first one is the poor performance of the countries for the SDGs as they implemented, the great inequality between different countries, the negative spillover effects, and of course, the persistent difference between the countries. So if you proceed with this report, you will see immediately after these 4 main key points that the Europe has to leave no one behind, and then to examine the convergence path between these the EU member states. Thus, following this procedure, we can see that regarding our main variables that Nikos mentioned before, that was energy productivity, energy efficiency, resource productivity, and circularity. Of course, we have the formation of different clubs for the European countries. We have 4 or 5 clubs regarding, and according, of course, the variable interest that we examine in our econometric technique. We use the Phillips and Sul methodology here. And as you can see, we have a completely different worlds between, the different clubs. Now, the second main question after that, it was if we have, following a panel VAR estimate, if we have, if we, let's say, we attribute with a great shock in energy productivity, do we have something tremendous in resource productivity? And the absolute second question for us, if we have also a shock in energy productivity and resource productivity, if we have actually a shock in circularity, in circular material use. I'm sorry to inform the audience from that the results regarding also the panel VAR estimate was actually very mild, and regarding the first case that the effect of energy productivity, of the shock of energy productivity on resource, it was very mild and negative. And in our last, slide, we have the shock and the panel VAR, the impulse response functions, about the shocks on of energy productivity and resource productivity on circularity material used, that it was very middle, and we found actually that nothing was may happen in Europe. Now, our results here have, I think, several policy and many policy applications regarding the cohesion of the policies in the European Union, and as well for the environment, as well for the energy. As we can see, we have different worlds in Europe regarding, of course, the variables into interest. And of course, we cannot say that one fits for all policies seems to be adequate for our cases, since we have specific convergence groups.
Konstantinos, yes, finish, please.
Okay, yes, sorry for this one. Okay. And the second one is that if we have a tremendous shock in energy productivity or resource productivity, the effects on the other will be very mild, and you can say that it will be not significant. So we have to confirm the hypothesis that individual policies in specific countries regarding specific sectors and specific measures should be implemented in Europe. Sorry for this and for hurry up. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. Thanks to Greece. And we are going to Germany. Julia Jenisch is the next one. As I understood in the workshop, Julia of Deutsch, you are German and studying in Canada. You are a research assistant in public decision-making, environmental economics and European integration. Welcome to our presentation section, and please, the floor is yours. Julia. Okay.
Hi.
Hi. Hello.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, put it on presentations mode.
Yeah. There we go.
Okay.
Do you see it?
We see two slides now. So the first one and the second one, if you can maybe change the mode.
Oh,
Nächste Folie und
like this.
yes, perfect. Okay.
Thank
Go
you
on.
very much for the introduction. I'm really happy to be here and to have the possibility to present my work today. So the title of my paper is Unmet Expectations and Analysis of the Adaptation to Country-Specific Recommendations in the fields of energy and infrastructure and also environment in Germany. Yeah, as you said, I'm from Germany and a PhD student there, but I'm also affiliated at the University of Victoria in Canada, and I also worked with a data set from researchers from this university in this project, and I will introduce it to you in a couple of minutes. So this is kind of my structure. First of all, I will explain to you a little bit the research focus, then I will go into the data analysis, and then I will briefly explain two case studies I conducted during my research, and then in the end I will draw a conclusion. So the main idea is that Germany is considered to be one of the leading countries in terms of climate-friendly environmental and energy policies. And as we saw at the beginning of the workshop, basically the consumption in Germany is way too high. So the question arises, is Germany meeting the expectations? And this is the question I wanted to analyze in my paper. And for this, I took into account the EU's country-specific recommendations in the fields of energy and infrastructure, as well as environment in Germany. And how did I do this? So I had a data set, which is called the Eurozem data set, and it's fairly new. It was published in 2021, and it includes all country-specific recommendations from 2012 to 2018. In this data set, the CSRs are grouped into 10 categories, and I picked two. So I picked the category environment and infrastructure and energy, which is one category. And in Germany, there are a total of 127 CSRs within the time span of the data set. And for our study, only around 23% of the CSRs are examined. The data set also shows how the European Union rates the progress in relation to the individual CSRs. The scores range from 1, which is no progress, to 5, which is full implementation. And on average, in these two policy fields, Germany has a progress of 2.3, which means that the progress is limited. From the theoretical perspective, I also included a model into my analysis, which is called the push and pull model of Birdsall. And it basically divides the actors in the policy development and decision making into push actors, for example, the European Union, and pull actors, for example, political parties, environmental organizations, interest group, etc. I didn't apply the model one-to-one, but I kind of adapted it to the needs of the study. During the study, I examined 2 case studies. The first case is the expansion of electricity and gas networks. So this country-specific recommendation is addressed to Germany almost in exact wording in the years 2012 to 2014, so 3 times. And the progress was rated 3 twice and 2 in the final year, which means that some progress is being made in principle, but that it's declining. It's the case that most wind turbines are located on and offshore in the coastal regions of the North Sea and the Baltic Sea. And the energy generated there must be directed to the south and west of Germany, where it is needed. So the grid expansion is a core element of a successful Energiewende, how we say in Germany. The problem is that a lot of stakeholders are involved in this process, so the planning is very long and very slow. And so this grid expansion process is very long because of these situations. Pull factors in this case could include, for example, network operators who naturally have an interest in expanding the networks, and local actors could be residents and NGOs, for example, but they might not pull on the same side. So it's very difficult to put these different interests together, and this weakens the pull factor immensely in this case. The second case is the elimination of barriers to competition in the railway market. Also, this CSR has been addressed during 3 years to Germany. And Germany's progress on this recommendation is rated on average between 1 and 2, meaning that no or limited progress has been made in this area. And while competition in regional passenger transport is steadily increasing, the Deutsche Bahn holds a quasi-monopoly in long-distance passenger transport. So in my analysis, I found that pull factors exist. For example, there is the Pro-Rail Alliance and also passenger associations, but they have too little room for improvement due to the legislation, because the German legislation still does not require that long-distance routes are put out to tender, so that 96% of the routes are currently operated by the Deutsche Bahn. In this case, it would be up to the federal government to act as a pull factor and amend this. So to conclude, in my paper, I deal with the country-specific recommendations to Germany, and I conducted 2 case studies and applied to the push and pull model. I found that in both cases, push factors are quasi non-existent, also because the CSRs are not binding. And the country-specific recommendations are often formulated quite general and don't offer a precise roadmap or concrete solutions, so they're not binding upon the member states. This leads to CSRs sometimes not being implemented. And this is my last slide. I formulated some policy recommendations. So for sure, it's recommended that Germany act sooner and streamline the processes. if we want to master the energy transition, it means that we have to act faster. And also all the planning process needs to be faster, particularly in view of the energy crisis in connection with climate change. Also, Germany should improve the competition in long distance transport if the train is to become a superior alternative to flights and the car. The long distance network would have to be expanded in such a way as to make domestic flights a less attractive option. And this would also involve adjusting the fares accordingly. And the last recommendation would be that the EU could formulate the CSRs with clearly limited timeframes to make them more concrete and also to formulate them as measurable targets. That's it from my work. I hope I'm in the time frame, and thank you for your attention.
Yes, thank you very much, Julia,
thank you.
Now we are going back to Greece, although one of the presenters is engaged as assistant professor in EU and environmental law. So Kleoniki Poukli, is she here, or will you do it?
She will join us in just a few minutes, I suppose. So,
okay.
Yeah,
so,
but I'm here.
Okay, thank you. I will present both of you, and she will then probably manage to join. So Greeks are very social, so they decided to do presentations in pairs, as it seems. So Kleoniki is coming from Greece, but is assistant professor at Utrecht University, and she's dealing with environmental law, sustainability, and EU law. And Riti, who is already here, you are also from Greece and coming from University of Athens, and you are also a lawyer specialized in environmental and public law. So we are looking for your case in waste management from Greece perspective. So the floor is yours. Will you start?
Thank you. Yes, please. Okay. I'll just share my screen. Just let me know if you can see our PowerPoint.
Yes, perfect.
Great.
Just go on, please.
Okay. Just a minute.
Okay, it's moving.
Okay. Great. We're fine. So, excuse me, here we are. So, good afternoon, everyone. It's very nice to be meeting you all. Thanks a lot for having us here in this very interesting webinar. My name is Arita Tsukala, as already mentioned, and within the next 8 to 10 minutes, I will just briefly present the paper on waste management and circular economy, lessons from the Greek experience, that we jointly prepared with my colleague Kleoniki Poukli, whom I warmly thank. So just as you may assume from the title of our paper, our main focus revolves around the main aspects of waste management policy and legislation in EU and Greece, with a final aim to put the spotlight on certain issues that may arise in the near future in respect of the most recent legislative developments. So waste generation constitutes the key byproduct of the modern economic and social lifestyle and consumption patterns, and is one of the main, unfortunately, constantly aggravating problems for the environment and human health, despite every attempt to control it. It is directly related to environmental and health impacts and to economic loss, infrastructure required for the management of waste, waste of natural resources, waste of materials that have a great commercial value. And therefore, it is more than obvious that waste and its management is a very central concept in the context of circular economy and sustainability. The transition to circular economy is the overarching EU policy governing the field of waste management since 2015, aspiring to address the current weaknesses of the waste law toolbox. In this context, as you may see from our presentation, the two circular economy action plans provide the necessary conditions to encourage economic and social actors to adopt strategies towards sustainability by establishing a more sustainable production and consumption model in which raw materials are kept longer in production cycles and can be used repeatedly, generating therefore much less waste. Moving now to the Greek waste management framework, which is the focus of our paper. Waste management has been recognized as one of the most pressing problems in Greece, despite the fact that during the last 2 decades, solid waste management in Greece has been upgraded and progress has been indeed increasingly observed. Nevertheless, there are still major structural problems in waste management system, as well as major enforcement difficulties, such as the landfill gate, which is currently low, along with the cheap illegal landfills, do not encourage recycling over disposing of waste, which is the aim. The available economic instruments are insufficient. The schemes currently in place are ineffective. Municipal waste generation has remained at the same level in recent years and has not been reduced as it should have, whereas the landfill rate has modestly decreased, and on the other hand, the recycling rate has slightly increased. So given these historic implementation challenges, there is a large number of Greek waste-related cases before the European Court of Justice. These judgments mainly concern the lack of waste management plans, as well as the operation of illegal landfills, but also at a domestic level, the rich waste-related case law of the Greek Council of State has vividly demonstrated that waste management in Greece falls dramatically short of the ideal model set by the EU law and the environmental protection standards. So the waste phenomenon in Greece, in Greek case law specifically, is mostly encountered in cases of waste, of site selection of waste treatment facilities or mismanagement of waste. However, a few months ago, the new Greek law on waste management was adopted, and therefore the hope that the country is entering a new and hopefully better era was born. This law was adopted in order to meet the obligations set by the revised EU waste law in the wake of the first Circular Economy Action Plan, as we already mentioned, this one of 2015, as well as to address some fundamental problems of the Greek waste management system. Among its basic provisions are the pay-as-you-throw scheme, which had not been yet implemented in our country, the emphasis on the extended producer's responsibility, the landfill fee, which is imposed on municipalities in order to reduce the amount of waste in landfills, tax incentives encouraging the donation of defective products, and it tried to connect waste law to planning law by setting the selection of a suitable area for collection and storage of waste as a condition for granting a specific building permit. So let's move now to a very brief critical assessment of the new law, and let's examine some issues that may arise during its implementation in the future. So there are some concerns on the uniform implementation of the pay-as-you-throw instrument, because there are different time frames set for local authorities to establish it. So we wonder, how is this going to work? Isn't it postponing its implementation? Also, there are some concerns on the disposal fee. If it is high enough to act as a disincentive, maybe the setting of a minimum threshold and the discretion of the public administration to adjust it reasonably in the future could be a reasonable and more adequate solution. We have, in general, there are similar thoughts on whether the financial contribution from the liable parties towards the collective alternative waste management systems is enough, so that the latter would be able to better perform their assigned mission. And also, apart from tax reliefs, maybe other tax incentives could be provided to promote the use of secondary materials in the production to help it become overall more sustainable. Also, incentives to the final consumers to recycle could be provided, such as the reward as you recycle system, and eco-labeling could be used to raise awareness of the consumers and to make them act more eco-friendly. To sum up, the overall evaluation of the measures introduced by the new law is undoubtedly positive. However, the long-standing non-compliance with the existing rules in Greece, combined with the systematic deficiencies of the operation of the relevant facilities and the activity of businesses in this area, maybe question the effectiveness of the new legislation. But it remains to be seen in the future. Thank you very much for your attention and for your precious time. I hope I was on time.
Yes, great. Thank you very much, Ariti.
I'll just stop sharing.
You did the entire presentation, as I
Okay. Yes, but Kleoniki will join us soon.
Okay. This was very efficient. Thank you very much. Thank you. We are moving to Slovenia. My colleague Eva Murko will present the case in artificial intelligence. So this means that from the sustainability point of view, we are moving to smart. Just temporarily, Eva is coming from Faculty of Public Administration and is a researcher in the fields of e-government, artificial intelligence, digital readiness, and public governance models. So, Eva, welcome here. We can see your presentation, so this means you can start.
Thank you. Okay, so it's moving also.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Regarding the AI, it belongs to the category of smart technologies and holds the potential to transform our societies. And it's also considered one of the most significant technological developments of the century. However, the field of AI is not new. The earliest ideas emerged in the 1950s, but have experienced several ups and downs since then. But recent significant breakthroughs in AI have been possible because of the advances in computing power, the increasing availability of big data, and the development of new algorithms. So AI is set to have the possibility to enhance industrial and technological capacity, to lead to more outstanding production and support the enhancement also of public services. There is a relatively dated idea of AI taking the place of human labor, but this is generally being let go. So the literature is identifying more and more domains in which AI can be applied, and which is also getting confirmed in practice. And there are already numerous industries adopting AI or are starting to, for example, like financial services, healthcare, public sector, transport sector, and so on. According to the latest European Commission's report, the EU invested between 7.9 and 9 billion in AI in 2019. And this is an estimated increase of 39% compared with 2018. And also from 2018 to 19, every EU member state boosted their level of AI investment. There was also an interesting finding regarding the development of AI and AI patents. Namely that AI is best developed when it's connected to other research activities. So this means that developing AI hand in hand with applications can be more fruitful than developing AI isolatedly. And the top 10% of AI producing regions in Europe belong to France, Germany, Netherlands, UK, Italy, Sweden, and Finland. And regarding the Sustainable Development Goals, there is the International Research Center in AI, which is based in Ljubljana. And they are creating a list and index of the top 100 projects that are solving problems related to the 17 SDGs with the application of AI. And the 2021 international call was highly successful. The projects covered all 17 goals, also multiple sectors, and every geographic region. And for the future, IRCAI also suggested that attention must be paid also to how AI can ethically contribute to sustainability. Slovenia published the AI strategic document last year in May. And besides the vision of AI and strategic goals, it also provides an overview of the state of the AI situation in Slovenia and presents its 40-year tradition of research activity. And according to the AI Watch Index, Slovenia ranks 4th among member states regarding the presence of research institutes within the composition of AI players by the type of organization. And on the EU level, in general, companies are the main type of AI player in all member states, and governmental institutions account for a smaller proportion. And the presence of AI content in master's degree programs is higher than for a bachelor's degree in most member states. In Slovenia, there is no AI content in bachelor's degree programs, but the AI intensity in the master's degree is the second highest in the EU. However, despite the relatively good and successful research environment, also educational in AI, Slovenia is increasingly faced with the brain drain of the younger, highly educated population. The digital skills of the general population have been assessed as too low for the accelerated digital transformation of the economy, and this is especially regarding advanced skills. And the latest development report for Slovenia also pointed out that attention should be paid especially to AI skills, where Slovenia is actually one of the worst performance among the member states. And regarding the private sector, in Slovenia, 905 companies reported using AI in 2021. However, this represents only 12% of companies. And most of them that use AI, they use it for recognizing objects or people based on an image. And the most common purpose of AI used is for the protection and safe use of ICT. And most companies purchased the commercial AI software as opposed to inside development. So there have been several critical areas highlighted related to the AI situation in Slovenia, but nevertheless, there are also several opportunities for Slovenia to progress towards an AI-supported society, because Slovenia has many years of research experience in AI and a relatively large number of professionally educated personnel, which is a crucial condition for understanding AI and also understanding the possibilities of its use. So to realize the vision of AI, the national program suggested several strategic objectives. For example, to educate people, to support research, introduce actual solutions, ensure a legal framework, ethical framework, and so on. These objectives have been prepared for the development of AI initiatives in Slovenia, but they can be universal and helpful also for other countries. And lastly, to conclude, OECD recommends that policies should promote trustworthy AI systems, encourage investment in responsible research, and enable small and medium-sized enterprises to thrive. Thank you so much for the intention. And if you have any questions, as Nina said, you can put them in the chat. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Eva. We are still with our colleagues from Faculty of Public Administration. Dejan Raušelj joining us to present the case of Croatia. Again, we are jumping in sustainability issues and challenges and possibly also solutions. So, Dejan, the floor is yours.
So yeah, thank you. I hope that you can hear me. So Nina, thanks for your introduction. And yeah, I'm going to present you the publication about energy transition in the European Union. So on the case of Croatia. So let me move forward. Okay. So here I have, let's say, brief introduction about my topic. Of course, some recent concerns related to climate change, and of course, these unexpected events such as COVID-19 and Russia-Ukraine war have dramatically affected the global economy, including the energy sector. And therefore, I believe that energy transition is often viewed as a solution to address environmental, economic, and society challenges. Consequently, the European Union and Croatia are trying to enhance somehow the use of renewable energy sources and improve energy efficiency. Therefore, the main aim of this chapter is actually to briefly present the challenges of opportunities for energy transition with a specific focus on the European Union and Croatia. Here on this slide, I have, let's say, a nice presentation showing the energy from renewable sources from 2020. And what we can see here is that Scandinavian countries, for example, Sweden and Finland, have the largest shares of energy which is produced from renewable energy sources. What we can also see is red short lines are actually national targets, and we can see that among the all European countries, only France did not meet its target level. However, all other countries, as you can see, meet their target levels. However, if you look, let's say, the situation for Sweden and Croatia, these two countries are, let's say, the two ones which significantly exceeded their target level, so by 11 percentage points. If I move forward. On the next slide, I'm showing the shares of electricity which is produced from renewable sources, and similar picture maybe as before. We can see that predominantly Scandinavian countries, and interestingly also Croatia has the largest share of electricity which is produced from renewable sources. And on the other hand, you can see we have some Mediterranean and Central European countries who are, let's say, lagging behind in terms of producing electricity from renewable sources. If we move forward and look at some specifics, or more specifically from which sources the electricity is the most generated in the European Union. And in the European Union, the most of electricity is produced from hydropower or from wind power. However, on the other hand, if you compare Croatia with Europe, we can see that about 70% of all electricity is generated from hydropower only. And I think that also Croatia should probably try to think about balancing these different energy sources and not focusing only on one, in this case on hydropower. And the next slide, I'm actually presenting the use of renewable energy for heating and cooling for 2020 in the European Union. And we can see, let's say, similar patterns, let's say, as before. So the countries with the highest shares of renewable energy used for heating and cooling are Baltic and Scandinavian countries. But however, we can see that also Croatia is above the European Union level. And I think that for Croatia as a country is that, let's say, a good thing. And if we look also the situation regarding the renewable energy which is used in transport, however, we can see that most of the countries, let's say, did meet the European target. We can see that the Sweden has about 32% of renewable energy which is used in transport. However, if we look at the Croatia, there are still, let's say, some opportunities to improve and to increase the renewable energy in transport. Here on the last two slides, I have presented some findings. So, of course, due to the recent macroeconomic turbulences and geopolitical developments, they actually reveals the complexities of the energy transition in the EU and Croatia. However, we saw in this presentation that the renewable energy consumption in Croatia is above the EU average. Then we also saw that actually Croatia has a huge potential for renewable energy sources and energy efficiency, because you know that especially the coastal region, there are a lot, let's say, of opportunities for building wind plants or photo power plants, geothermal power plants, and so on. And I can also mention that Croatia has recently started some energy transition projects, which are actually also a good thing for Croatia. However, there is still a room for improvement for this country. And here I have briefly presented some policy recommendations, and these are developing a balanced approach, promoting renewable energy sources by educating people and citizens. Then it's also highly recommended to ensure and encourage tenders for research and exploitation of renewable and efficient energy sources like wind, water, and solar power. Then it's also important for Croatia to simplify different administrative procedures and so on. And the last recommendation is related to that. If Croatia wants to be successful, I believe that it should follow the EU and global decarbonization trends. So this was my brief presentation, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dejan. This was really exact, so we also can prepare some questions for, you're welcome to put them in chat to continue with discussion, not only stay with the presentations. So the next one is Melania Gabriela Ciot, coming from Romania. She's associate professor at University of Băbeș-Bolyai, dealing with topics like international negotiations, European affairs, decision-making process in foreign policy, European Green Deal, and cultural diplomacy. Melania, we already met in the breakout room, and I would like to welcome you here in this part of the event also. You can upload the slides. We cannot hear you.
I'm sorry, I cannot share the screen. It's something happening with it.
Let me check.
Just a second. We are checking.
Yes, I think I can now.
Okay.
Can you see the slide?
Yes, just try to put on presentations mode.
I cannot. I don't know what is happening with it. I cannot put it. I had some problems with the laptop in this afternoon, so
then leave it like this and just maybe enlarge. and then you will have to manually jump from
Yes, but
to another.
I think this is the only option that I have now.
Okay,
Oops.
okay.
Or I will try to enlarge it, but this is the biggest. So thank you for the presentation, and I would like to thanks to the editors of the book and also to the organizers of this event for inviting me and for making the opportunity for me to be here with you and to assist to this very interesting conference. So the topic of my presentation is the smart cities in Romania and the European Green Deal. So today cities are seen as both the source of our challenge and the solutions to it. European urban areas are home to more than 2/3 of the population, which accounts for 80% of energy use and provide 85% of European GDP. These urban areas are the engines of the European economy and its development. An integrated approach will assure the success of urban development, and the achieving of the objectives of the European Green Deal will bring the answers to the challenges that cities are facing. For the European Green Deal's implementation, the European Commission recently launched the 100 Smart Cities initiative to reach the objective of climate neutrality. The European policy, yes.
Just a second, are you moving towards the end of the slides? Because the slides are not moving. You have to click.
Yes, I know, but I will start moving them. It is just the introduction.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
okay,
sorry. Yes, sorry. Immediately I will do that. Yes, thank you. So the present papers aim to identify the challenges and opportunities of EGD for smart cities from Romania, selected for the 2022 European Commission initiatives, namely Bucharest, Cluj-Napoca, and Suceava. And the analysis will consider three factors: clean mobility, energy efficiency, and urban ecological planning. So the content of my presentation will go on 5 parts. The first one being about the 11th SDG objective and its characteristic for Romania. The second part will be about the 100 Smart Climate Neutral Cities initiative in Romania. The third will focus on potential improvement of national policies for a better implementation of EGD in Romania. The fourth, potential improvement of national policies for a better implementation of EGD in Romania. And the last one will be the conclusion. So one of the goals of EGD is dedicated to sustainable cities and communities, the 11th. And for the EU, the indicators of these goals are the quality of life, sustainable mobility, and the environmental impact. If we can look at this objective, we can see that for some indicators, there are a significant improvement, especially for the quality of life, and for others, there are decreasing levels. The situation is quite interesting for Romania for this objective, and it indicates a lower status for all indicators. An evident improvement, of course, appeared for the analyzed indicators with some significant evolution, for example, for the population living in households suffering from noise, which decreased from 2015 till 2020. This was the period for which I analyzed the indicators. So I may say that Romania is following the European trends for all indicators, meaning an increased tendency, but it is advisable to create more measures and more efficient national and local policies to compensate for the gaps. The recent events from the EU's neighborhood, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, exposed some of the EU's fragilities. They proved that building resilience is like to a strong economy with strategic autonomy. Technology is essential in this process, and the EU has to catch up with other regions. The data collected by the ICT or social media technologies could be used to transform cities and communities, supporting the creation of a European data space, especially for EGD, to develop a digital ecosystem of the environment. Going to the second part of the presentation, the 100 Smart Climate Neutral Cities is an initiative of the European Commission launched in 28th of April. And from Romania, 3 cities were selected: Bucharest, Cluj-Napoca, and Suceava. And these cities will be individually analyzed on my study based on the circular and green economy model from the perspective of clean mobility, energy efficiency, and urban planning capacities. This is the map of Romania, and the cities, as we can see, are situated in different parts. The Bucharest in the southern part of Romania, Cluj-Napoca in the northwest part of the country, and Suceava in the northeast part of the country. So the Bucharest is the capital city of Romania. In the photo, there is the Palace of Parliament. It has the highest urbanization degree from Romania, 90%, and concentrate almost 14% of the population of Romania, divided in 6 sectors. These are territorial administrative subunits. The region Bucharest-Ilfov, from which our capital city is part, is the most developed city in Romania, with a GDP of 160 of the EU average and an occupancy rate of 89.5%, and of course 1.1 unemployment rate. Regarding regional competitiveness, it occupies 151st place from 268 EU regions, also has a very good occupancy rate. So about the smart city concept and strategy for Bucharest, this concept is insufficiently promoted and applied, and the capital city does not have a strategy for it, occupying 104 places from 174 cities in 80 countries evaluated after the matrix of smart cities. At the regional level, there are not clear initiatives in this sense. The digitalization and interoperability of public services are dysfunctional for the whole Bucharest-Ilfov region. The leading digitalized service is local taxes payment, and the management of document, unfortunately, is still realized mainly on paper support. So the first indicator that was analyzed, clean mobility, indicates that there is a plan for sustainable mobility for 2016-2030, but with no updates for the EGD strategy. The city is recognized for the problems of greenhouse gas emission generated by public transport, air pollution, noise, agglomeration. It is on the first place of agglomeration in the EU caused by congestion. Also, the public transport infrastructure is used, unmodernized, and unsafe, and the rolling stone auto park for public transport is used, old, and unecological. For the second indicator, the energy efficiency, this is reduced, and the residential and public buildings generate unsustainable energy consumption. The residential fund represents 12% of the national one and is old and characterized by low comfort. So the energy strategy for the city available to the public from their website is from 2007, so it is not updates through the lenses of the EGD. The last indicator, urban planning, is referred to in the strategy, integrated strategy for urban development of this city, which proposed a vision for 2015 for a global metropole, a European capital. It is a vision for a city to be a competitive European capital with an international reputation. The second city is the city to which I belong, is in the first place university, a city with approximately 100,000 students. It is the only regional growth pole in Romania with an increased population, and from an economic perspective, it concentrates 70% of the country's economic activity and more than 25% of the northwest region of Romania. The city has the fastest economic growth in the EU between 2000 and 2017. About the smart city concept, it is proposing to reach the climate neutral targets, the following objective, with new green spaces, with trees, with networks of sensors, with water and soil quality, with green-blue corridors, sustainable mobility, energy efficiency, circular economy, and sustainable urbanism. There are 4 elaborated strategies, and the city is also one of the signatory members of the Green City Accord. There is a strategy for the digital transformation of the city recently launched in 2021, representing the city's vision toward reaching climate neutrality. And the main objective is to increase the local community's quality of life and prosperity. Of course, there are some specific action proposed for the digital transformation of the city. Also, there are some smart mobility solution for the city, which are functional because I'm using them. Regarding the energy efficiency, the second indicator for analysis, the first energy efficiently was elaborated for the city in 2017. So before EGD, it was made in collaboration with the technical university. There are several solutions elaborated for increasing the energy efficiency, developing the professional competencies of human resources, some procedures and instruments, defining energy performance indicators, promoting local renewable energy solutions, collaboration with an energy provider. The last indicator for Cluj-Napoca is the urban planning. This vision has in this this theoretical approach of the urban regeneration with ecologic system, economic viability, and local communities. There are some proposals for urban development, increasing the green areas, walkable city, a program for pedestrian areas, the first eco-neighborhood from Romania, and online participatory budgeting, the first initiative of this kind in Romania. The third city is Suceava in northeast part of Romania with more than 100,000 inhabitants. The city has the highest economic growth from this part of Romania, but the region's vulnerabilities indicate the increased level of external migration. In terms of clean mobility,
Melania, could you please summarize?
Summarize, okay.
Yes.
I will just add that the city is not ready for implementation of the EGD. Some of the documents are just general with no concrete elements. Of course, that in my study, there could be find some details. There are some potential improvement of national policies. We need a national digitalization, a national GD strategy, an international cooperation is needed, also some specialized personnel, some guidelines and instruments for local administration twinning programs, also some partnership, of course, transparent decisions to be implemented. And in conclusion, reaching the climate neutral objective for local administration in Romania is a challenging task. The 3 selected cities have different levels of development and understanding of European policies and mechanisms. The urban policy should be adapted to the citizens' life. The EU's climate neutrality goals will challenge the member states differently, and the EGD implementation will favor transformational changes and integrated regional and local solution. And thank you all for your attention and patience with my technical abilities. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We all have space in in becoming smart and so on. Okay, thank you very much, Gabriela. So we will meet also in the last part of today's event in the roundtable, and I think it will be very interesting because we will have an insider from Slovenian smart city. So you will have the possibility to share the information and experience. Okay, I would like to welcome the last presenter. Beatriz Perez de las Heras is coming from Spain, from University of Bilbao School of Law. and she is a researcher and professor in EU climate and energy policy, in democracy and citizenship in the EU. So Beatrice, you were already very active in the workshop part, and I would also like to welcome you here with your presentation. So please join us with your slides. I will wait until you upload them.
Thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon to everybody. Theoretically, I am sharing the screen.
Not yet.
No?
Not yet.
Can you see it?
No, not yet.
No?
Maybe
we can.
Can Dan help you, and so that he can share?
Okay. So I don't touch anything. Sorry.
Okay, just leave it. Diane will share them, and you will just direct when to move on. Okay. Just a second, so that he finds them.
Okay.
Okay. He found your slides.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Dejan. Thank you. Thank you. Well, good afternoon again, and thank you. Many thanks to the organizers for this opportunity to participate in this event and in this collective publication about the road to a smart and sustainable European Union, right? Well, can I pass the slides? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Well, under this title, Towards Sustainable Recovery in the European Union, the experience of the Spanish recovery plan. Well, my purpose has been to analyze the Spanish recovery, transformation, and resilience plan, and to assess its potential contribution to the EU sustainability goals and priorities. So in this chapter, I first go into the EU context because it's the reference for this specific analysis and assessment. Then in the EU context, I highlight how the European Green Deal and the EU post-COVID recovery package, the EU next generation EU with all the financial instrument it includes, and the most important is the Recovery and Resilience Facility. Well, the European Green Deal and the EU recovery package, they shape now the current strategy and financial framework for the EU to promote sustainable development. Specifically, the EU recovery package aims not only to alleviate the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, but also to consolidate and accelerate the transition to sustainability and resilience initiated before the pandemic. Well, I also find that the integration of the Sustainable Development Goals in the European semester cycle since 2020 is a relevant aspect in the EU, in this EU context. Now, since 2020, the European semester includes a specific annex reporting on the performance of member state performance as compared to the EU average and their progress in its sustainable development goal. So this is the EU current framework towards sustainability and resilience. And in this context, I analyze and assess the Spanish recovery plan. Well, Spain is one, if not the main, is one of the main beneficiaries, if not the main beneficiary of the EU recovery funds, like Italy, because Spain, like Italy, was one of the countries most impacted by the pandemic. The devastating is in the next slide. Jan, please. Thank you. The devastating economic and social effects of the very strict lockdown measures adopted by the Spanish government were exacerbated by certain structural shortcomings of the Spanish economy, chiefly the poor diversification of the Spanish economy, because it's highly dependent on tourism, and also certain weaknesses in the labor market. So now the EU recovery funds, and the implementation of the Spanish recovery plan, with no doubt, offer an opportunity to diversify the Spanish economy and to shape a more resilient model. Well, I find in this chapter that the Spanish recovery plan is aligned with the EU sustainability priorities. Well, it's a finding based on the European Commission assessment of the Spanish plan. In scope, the Spanish recovery plan is very ambitious. It is very ambitious. It includes 112 investment and 102 reforms. The investment are mainly targeted at accelerating the green transition and digital transformation towards a small climate resilient economy and, well, ensuring social cohesion. And the reforms, on the other hand, seek to address these structural shortcomings, bottlenecks that have still impede lasting and sustainable growth. Both the investment and reforms have to be implemented before the end of 2026. And for their achievement and implementation, Spain will receive almost 70 billion euro in grants and another 70 billion in loans. Well, up to date, the implementation of the Spanish plan has been quite fast. In fact, Spain was the first member state to receive the first allocation in August of 2021, and the last installment was paid at the end of July, after the European Commission assessing that Spain had complied with some of the milestones and objectives it has to meet to receive the successive payment. Specifically, Spain has to comply with a total of 416 milestones and objectives. Well, the implementation of the investment and reforms have continued rather fast this year, despite the complex and uncertain scenario generated by the war in Ukraine. And this challenging geopolitical scenario has made it even more urgent to accelerate action to address one of the major challenges that Spain has, which is to accelerate action to accelerate the transition towards a more resilient and energy independent economy. Well, this is not we know that this is not a specific challenge of Spain. This is a challenge of the EU, of the whole EU, right? In order to address the challenge, to accelerate the transition to clean and affordable and independent energy system, Spain specifically will have to make additional efforts, right, to accelerate the decarbonization of the economy and to promote renewable energy. It will have to make additional effort just now to meet the new EU energy targets in order to reduce also its still high dependence on fossil fuels. The Spanish energy mix is highly dependent on fossil fuels. Apart from that, apart from this challenge, which has become even more urgent to be addressed in the current scenario, I find also that there are additional challenges. Please, Dejan, can you, thank you. Maybe the next slide. Thank you. There are also additional challenges, pending vulnerabilities, which are not sufficiently covered by the Spanish recovery plan, and that will need additional efforts and additional investment by Spain. These additional challenges that are not covered sufficiently by the Spanish recovery plan are identified, have been identified by the European Commission in the 2020 country annual report. Specifically, apart from this, the challenge to accelerate the decarbonization of the economy, another additional challenge that will require further efforts by Spain is the improvement of the recycling capacity, because the Spanish recycling rate is quite below the EU average. So improvement in circular economy will be necessary. And this improvement in circular economy that Spain can make will help to reduce its dependence on imports and to reduce its external debt and imbalances. Another, sorry, can you, Dejan, can you pass? Thank you. Another challenge is improvement of productivity improvement, chiefly through more investment on research and development. Here, Spain is also below the rate, the EU rate of investment on research and development. Linked to this, also additional efforts, special efforts will have to be made in Spain for reskilling, skilling, for training human resources for the green and digital transition. Also, fiscal sustainability is an additional challenge. Spain will have to ensure a sustainable fiscal policy to keep the balance between public expenditure and the well, the expected growth in the midterm. And associated to fiscal sustainability, the correction of macroeconomic imbalances is also an additional challenge that will require further efforts by Spain. And the level of external debt, public and private debt, is still very high in Spain. And finally, also improvement in labor market, reforms in labor market will be necessary in order to address the current labor market fragmentation and the high level of youth unemployment. Well, the loans that Spain hopes to be allocated under the Recovery and Resilience Facility, and as well as the financial support it will receive from the cohesion policy, are expected to contribute to addressing these challenges and imbalances in the coming year. But finally, in this current unpredictable geopolitical scenario, I find, or I highlight, that flexibility will be required, not only in Spain, but also in Europe. Flexibility will be required in policy responses and support. A progressive updating and adjustment of the measures during the lifetime of the EU recovery package and the national recovery plans and even beyond, in order to consolidate this road towards a more sustainable and resilient economy. And in this progressive and continuous adjustment, I think the country-specific recommendation and the annual country reports within the European semester, they provide the essential guidelines for each member state and for all member states to remain on this road towards a smart and sustainable EU. So thank you. Thank you, Dejan, for the technical support.
Thank you, Beatrice. Thank you very much. Okay, we came to the end of this part. We didn't see any questions in chat. Probably the day is quite long, but definitely we will have interesting guests in the last part. So I suggest that we take a short break and meet in 15 minutes. So we will continue with the roundtable at 5 p.m. and still we will leave everything open, and any comments, any suggestions, any questions are welcome in the chat. So I would like to thank to all presenters. Thank you very much for your oral presentations and your written papers that will be gathered in a publication that will be published by Zavod 14 and ELF. So see you in 15 minutes. Thanks to everybody. Eva. Hello. Hello, Rook. We are all
Hello.
on board. Okay, I have to check the guests. Hello, everybody. Welcome back for the third time today again. I'm glad we met at our round table with our 4 distinguished guests. So we know 3 of them, at least we who are here from 1 p.m. So Melania Gabriela is from Romania. She presented the case of Romania regarding the smart cities. Then we have Konstantinos again with us, and Ruk from Slovenia. And we have another colleague coming from Praxis, Tomasz Laniszek. Welcome in our company. Tomasz is currently head of unit of development in municipality of Kran. He is responsible for smart city and other projects in municipality of Kran, which is this means Slovenian, 3rd biggest city. Tomasz has very rich experiences from business as a very successful manager. He then studied also at IMD, and he's very active in different Slovenian business associations, like Association of Managers, like American Chamber of Commerce. And with his rich experience, he joined the team of enthusiasts in our northern city. It's not the most northern, but northern than our capital. And they are having really nice results, also promoting them in Europe. So we will have the possibility to exchange the experiences also with Romania. Tomasz just mentioned, Melania Gabriela described 3 cases of Romanian cities which are also in the group of these 100 European smart cities to be in 2030. So
thank you very much, Nina, and welcome.
Yeah.
I mean, hello to everybody. I was following part of the afternoon session, not all of them, but the one that I actually was listening was very interesting. So looking forward to this roundtable.
transition can now do wonders, so we can be in many spots at the same time. So Tomasz joined us from the neighboring faculty, and now he's with us. Otherwise, this wouldn't be possible. Okay, so if we begin, if you don't have any questions for each other, you can also raise hands or put questions in the chat. So this means also for you who are active participants at the roundtable, and for those who are listening, everybody is therefore welcome to join with questions, with challenges, with proposals, with conclusions. And maybe, Konstantinos already, you started. Welcome. So I can have a break. Just do it.
Okay. Someone has to start. Okay, so I don't be a shy guy. So my question is about First of all, I have to thank Rock for his comments in the chat. Okay, thank you very much.
You're
I don't
welcome,
know if
Konstantinos.
Nikos wants also to go further on this issue, because we didn't manage with 2-3 minutes, to say a lot of things about work, because it was also applied econometrics. Now, my question is of course for Gabriela, but it's also theoretically, but about also for Tomas. So I think that questions can be raised about the extent to which going green and going smart, these two concepts overlap each other or better converge in their quest for sustainable development, or maybe different or diverge, leading somehow to different directions or different interpretations of sustainable development. So according to your way of thinking the things or implementing things, do you think that this is happening?
Who goes first?
Yeah.
No, Gabriela, please, ladies first.
Okay, ladies first, and then Rook, and then Tomas, okay?
Okay. I intervene because I thought that the question is addressed to me. That's why it's based on that. So thank you for the question. From what I have read, from my analysis, for my study for this book, I think that there are different levels of implementation of approaching European Green Deal, especially at the local city. If I'm thinking to the 3 cities which I analyzed, I can say that only one of them, which is very good for me because I'm living in the city, is our city from Transylvania. But this is because the business environment is very developed in this region. So the business, it's the environment, the businessman, the local community, the business community is the one responsible for this economic development. In the graphic that I presented, it is known that my city had the fastest economic growth due to the German investment also in the region, and also for the local entrepreneurs. So I think that the European Green Deal needs this entrepreneurial approach, especially that from what I have seen also in the United States, but also in European Union, there is an intense debate about the Green New Deal, especially coming from the post-pandemic period, facing this ongoing energy crisis and, of course, the future crisis that may come. I think that also twinning programs and local initiatives are very good, and the partnership between the cities and regions that have the same similarities could help in a better implementation of European Green Deal. Thank you.
Okay, Rook, could you add anything, please?
Yes, so first of all, I would like to thank Konstantinos, Gabriela, and to everyone for the participation, right? So and also for a really nice discussion, right? So what I would like to add here, perhaps, is essentially I try to be critical in a constructive way, right? So to facilitate and proceed forward with the European Green Deal, right? First and foremost, it's important, of course, to have solid and measurable indicators of sustainability and climate neutrality as disaggregated as possible, right? So basically what I'm trying to do here, right, is essentially to construct some variables that would be able to measure and tell us what is the extent of factor productivity, what is the extent of firm level innovation at the city level. So building a data set that would allow us basically to compare cities, regions, municipalities, and countries on a single scale, right? Because how I see the thing is quite simple. So when we will be able to measure, right, the reality, we will basically be able to better understand it, right? Deploy the appropriate policies. And also, as I mentioned in the presentation, I think we must move forward with an active monitoring and evaluation, see how much progress has been done at each individual country, region level, and city level, right? And then basically elicit the best practices also that Gabriela has spoken of, right? That Konstantinos has also highlighted in his presentation. And because I essentially think that in the data-rich age, I don't see any reason why policy making behind the European Green Day should operate as if we are living in a data poor environment, right? And there are many opportunities that, for example, especially Konstantinos, in your presentation, this is what I'm missing in the European policy discourse. Is someone, for example, you have an impulse response function based on panel vector autoregression, you immediately analyze cause and effect relationship, you know what causes what, right? And then you can discuss, you know, maybe you should move over to the industry level, what the results are obtained at a country level, and deploy the appropriate policies. And to be a little bit critical of the European Commission, sometimes I don't like that European commissioners are essentially have deaf ears in a data-rich environment for these insights, because I don't see any other meaningful way, right, except through a really careful cause and effect relationship. How could actually we help? Right, not only because this is usually a panacea, you know, in the policy discussions, we think, okay, Eastern European countries need this type of solution. No, I think everyone needs it, right? We should stop discriminating between East and West. It's one Europe, right? I don't think that the problems of the Greek or Slovenian or Spanish economy are any different than ones of those of the German economy in the green energy transition. And therefore, I would really be kind of, you know, happy if we could have better measures of factor productivity, carbon intensity, firm level innovation, local level innovation at the most disaggregated level, to have a large data set that we could track, observe over time, and then monitor how policies actually help. Because I think it's more insightful to learn which policies don't improve climate neutrality, right? Because this is also informative per se, right? Because I think this is only basically one possible and perhaps sanguine way forward, right, to achieve climate neutrality. Because again, I mean, climate neutrality in the European Green Deal, it's like a contract, right? And every country that has signed it has an obligation to deliver what it promised. And sometimes I think that politicians, right, or even European commissioners, they are too overwhelmed by this type of movements for social activism, which is actually very proliferated online, right? And sometimes I think it deters attention from identifying binding constraints on climate neutrality, right? And then shifting the direction, the attention where I think it shouldn't, right? And this is what I would like to add in this particular respect. So let's keep and exploit the richness of the data-rich environment.
Okay, thank you, Rok. Tomasz, please.
Thank you, Nina. Well, I agree very much with Rok and Gabriela, because it's really a lot of words were said and a lot of, you know, Fed words are there. So this Green Deal can be a buzzword, used to be a buzzword, but I pretty much believe now, because we had a lot of discussion with European Commissions also now on the Green Deal, let's say, idea. And I believe the European Commission really wants to achieve a breakthrough here. The challenge is, of course, that it's, you know, too many cooks will spoil the broth, as it's said. And if we don't really focus on particular areas, then a lot of money can be wasted. And this helicopter money, in a lot of cases, is a dangerous one, because everybody gets it, and then, you know, they don't have really the go where to go. And okay, the city of Kranj, as you said, the third biggest city in Slovenia, and a small city compared to the others, because in this 100 EU mission of carbon neutrality and smart cities, there's 75 million of us together. Huh? The city of Kranj is 60,000 people alone, but we and 99 other cities are 75 million. So we are big, and they don't have to be big to be interesting and important. And in this case, the agility is something that is in our favor. European Commission with this mission, and these missions are used, so 5 missions of EU are used in a way that we want to do it in a way like we did it like 50 years ago, getting to the moon. So you had these Apollo missions, and these are exactly the missions that we are now having. The next one being the mission for cancer and very fertile soil and water treatment and so on. So what we did here is actually we want to change things in order to test things. So test before you invest. And European Commission here really said by 2030, 100 cities can actually do it. So it's 100 European Union cities plus 12 cities from the accession countries. And you will, when we had a meeting with the Vice President of the European Commission, with Mr. Timmermans, on the 13th of June in Brussels, so all 100 cities, he said, the majority of you will fail. And we know that. But the fact is, if you don't try, you will not get, not even close. And the winners in this whole area, so the projects that are interesting and successful, are going to be then copy pasted in other countries, in other cities. And this is what we want to achieve with this mission. So at least we start, we try, because it's pretty much the same what it's done in India, it's done in China, it's done in the United States, a bit less in the United States, but nevertheless, even they have very good green deals and green initiatives in that area. Our sister city, Colorado Springs, is very active on that, and that's the city or the whole state of Colorado, because we were there in July because we signed the Sisterhood City agreement. The whole city of Colorado, let's say in the United States, had 1 month all public transport free of charge for 1 month. The whole state of Colorado, not only city. So we are talking about the United States, where commuting is definitely something that is not a big deal because you have your own car, you have your vans and so on. No, but people were starting using the public transport, which is something that was not seen in the last couple of years. So it's possible. And the initial question that was pointed is it possible to do both? Yes, I believe yes. And it's overlapping. For sure, digital transformation can enable us to go green and vice versa. And the smart city concept as such is nothing else than we living at least as good as today or even better in the future, but with much less resources. And it's as simple or as easy or hard as that. And digital technology can definitely help. We as the mankind, they were working 16 hours a day and then 12 hours a day to survive, and then 8, and now it's 7.5 hours, maybe tomorrow 4 hours a day, because of the productivity and technology. And technology will enable us. But it will be quite a bit of a pressure on the jobs in the future. And this is one of the things that we will need to solve, because enough time is nice, but too much time, then it's a question mark what we do in our spare time. And it's more and more of us. So in this case, I see it as an advantage and possibility, but a lot of collaboration among ourselves will be needed, and the whole world is now connected, literally. With the IoT technology, with the 5G now, because 5G via satellites in the next couple of months and years will be able to provide the high-speed network, internet network, on each and every place in the world. So this is one of the things that was not seen so far in the world. But we are lucky here in Slovenia because we are a safe country. We have a lot of water. We don't have too much pressure on these high temperatures, but for sure we will be interesting spot for other people to come here. And this is one of the challenges that, of course, we need to pretty much be aware of.
Okay, thank you, Tomasz. Konstantinos, did you get the answers? Any other questions?
It's different, the theory. There's a difference between the theory and also for the implementation. So as an economist, I can see the theory, and Tomasz, of course, asked me my question. But also Rock open, Pandora's box about having good data. And I have a second question. I would keep silent for, the Beatrice and my colleagues in Greece. It was from Ariti, I think, and Kleoniki, if they are here. I think that Rock is gonna agree with me about having, some environmental regulation laws, some laws, let's say, and how can we, as an economist, quantify them in order to see their implementation. This is, we are using indirect, let's say, methods. I can see, for example, the famous Rock-Porter hypothesis, okay, in environmental innovation. So if Kleoniki Beatrice can say to me from their perspective as lawyers, how can we, as an economist, quantify the environmental law in order to give to Tomasz or to Gabriela a policy perspective about the impact of environmental law on a city, for example. Thank you very much. And I will keep silent, I promise. Okay.
Leonike, maybe you?
Yes, hello.
Hello.
Good evening from my side as well, and apologies I couldn't join earlier. I had the lecture to finish. I'm sorry, but happy to follow the last part of the webinar and this session. Yes, Konstantinos, I wish I could answer the question, but a lawyer cannot answer how an economist can assess a legal tool. So for me, it's the same. I mean, the lawyers, the legal scholars needs input from natural science experts, from economists, from policy administration experts to give us input of what kind of laws they need and what are the data. I mean, especially in environmental law, most of the enforcement issues as regards at EU level and at national level has to do with lack of reliable and updated data. How am I supposed to present this Natura 2000 X area when I don't know what is the current updated data as regards the biodiversity in this super protected area? So the legal tools are there, and some of them are very effective. And if I can add to this, the European Union itself has a mechanism to self-assess, so to say, the European pieces of legislation. It's the REFIT process. So after some years of life of each directive or regulation, it can self-assess, self-evaluate to what extent this legislation is still efficient, is still appropriate, it fulfills their initial aims. So yes, I mean, for me, what is missing is to join the dots between the different experts working on at the same area. And EU Green Deal and all this discussion about decarbonization of economy and the energy transition, it shouldn't be approached in a fragmented way. This is a comment, a general comment to these discussions, and happy to continue or follow up after anybody's.
We are interdisciplinary here, or transdisciplinary.
Yes.
So
yes,
nice to hear different perspectives. Beatrice, I think you were also challenged. Is she here? Not. I think not. Would anybody else like to comment on this, on lawyers' perspectives?
No, and if I may, one more comment. I mean, I can. I will just give you an example because it was mentioned, this sustainability and circular economy and the waste management that it was presented by Ariti. On the one hand, it's this type of concept that we are trying to move to sustainable waste management patterns, etc., which says that, okay, I can send then my waste wherever would be treated more effectively. In India, in Turkey, in Slovenia, wherever it would be treated more effectively and in a proper and environmentally sound manner. On the other hand, there are some principles which says the proximity principle, the self-efficient principle. You need to keep them at national level because there are environmental and health risks if you move them, if you opt for this waste movement option. So, of course, in the current version of EU legislation, there are contradictions, and EU Green Deal and these new concepts really overstretch the limits and require better coordination and streamline. I just referred to an example in the field that I'm more familiar, just to show you that there are clashes, and somebody needs to say that no, an economist or a natural scientist or an expert in waste management, not a lawyer, to tell you that this way in that country is the more efficient. Yeah, just to give you the picture.
Okay, thank you very much. As I can sense, we are all the time moving around the science and the data and all these issues, and maybe starting with Ruk, which institution or few institutions are, you think, on the European and world level the most relevant for saying this is now the science, this is now the truth, these are the right measures, this will be the right goals, in order not to say something is conspiracy theory? And for example, who will measure the goals from 10 years ago or in 2050, for example? How to tackle this? Because everything is very dispersed, I think. And again, it has to be then reconnected from national levels to the EU level. If you can comment on this, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nina, and also I would like to thank Kleonoki for really valuable insights, right? So also one of my office mates is a comparative lawyer, and we always have the same type of discussion, you know, basically this traditional conflicts between lawyers and economists, right? And in a nice way. But I basically to go back to the institutional layer. So what I've learned over these several years is essentially that if we try to look at this global multilateral framework, right, so the general workers, basically, if I try to evaluate institutions based on the quality of the empirical work they do, maybe I would rank International Monetary Fund as #1. Maybe this is unfair, followed by the OECD and the European Commission, which I think score fairly evenly, right? The problem then is, of course, sometimes, and this is also quite big issue in recent years, right, is that essentially there is a lack of coordination between the multilateral organizations and the national governments, right? So multilateral organizations usually, including the EU, right, we must admit, has done a fairly good job in providing the guidelines to the national governments what should be done, right? But sometimes, and this is often happens, of course, politicians at home, right, simply have different priorities, right, on the agenda. And this is a big problem, for example, and what lacks is essentially a commitment. And if you try to look at the level of commitment in the policy planning and formulation, several countries in the EU, based on my experience, set out as a role model. I would emphasize especially the Netherlands and Austria, right? There's two examples from what I learned, right? Where, for example, it's quite clear that policies are actively discussed between the government, between the parliament, between the civil society, between the stakeholders, right? And where genuinely what is essentially important is the sense of social cooperation. What has happened more recently, right, is that science or scientific ideas, right, and that try to dissect facts from fiction or facts from conspiracy theories have come under attack, right? That's why, of course, I'm saying also message when I'm having discussions with policymakers, keep your head cold, but keep your heart warm when you plan policies, right? Should never be seduced by social activism of any way or another, climate change denialism, any type of this anti-establishment movement, because it can easily lure them, right, into the diagnosis of wrong priorities, right? And then if we try to look at the European Green Deal, right, European Union, I think, would do a fair deal on its own, that would improve its credibility by quite a fair deal if simply we're able to monitor the progress that countries have. And sometimes if Hungary is the bad guy or any other country is a bad guy, maybe don't use sanctions, right? Maybe just say to them, look, you are actively lacking in this progress. It would be nice if you would improve. But then, of course, if populist parties are in power, I can tell you from my experience, they couldn't care less about science and climate sustainability because they have totally different priorities, right? Now, then it would be much more feasible if the pressure, right, in the presence of weak democracies, right, comes from the bottom up. So essentially, it's the universities, civil societies, NGOs that adopt this modus operandi or modus vivendi, where empirical practices are used to evaluate policies and then simply inform policymakers to build a uniform consensus, right? Because this is how there will be much less maneuver for politicians. It could be Movimento Cinque Stelle in Italy or anyone else, right? Simply to fool the voters and divert attention from those priorities, right? And My question, I mean, my assessment here would be just the following. So if the pressure comes from bottom up, right, then easily, I mean, when some policies are evaluated, whether they're effective or not, it's much easier to communicate. It's of course to the society in general, and also much easier to pressure the policymakers. So I think there's a lot of reason for cautious optimism.
Thank you very much. Cleoniki raised her hand.
Yes, I fully agree, but my only concern has to do with how educated and trained is population of its member state, even in countries which have more sensitive issues, and there might be some kind of awareness and engagement, but especially as regards the topics that have been touched upon in this webinar and in this event. Environmental, climate change, energy transition. They're very specific, and I mean, I would say that I understand and I fully agree that the bottom-up pressure is what is needed, and the engagement and the citizens' active participation. However, although I don't have this background, just as an observer, I would say that policy making, it's also an exercise of pragmatism and realism. So many things needs to be balanced. Even if bottom-up pressure moves towards one direction, maybe it's a reality test to some extent. Just, yeah, as a comment.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody like to add anything? No, maybe then I challenge Konstantinos. So we had a climate conference which finished this month in Egypt, and as we heard that it concluded with a historic decision to establish and operationalize a loss and damage fund, so to help Global South. And we heard also that Europe is getting warmer twice as fast as the other parts of the world. So how much should, in your opinion, the EU countries focus on our own challenges, and how much to Global South? Because should we first put a mask on our face or help others, or do both? So what is your opinion in this direction?
Of course, my personal view. I think that they put the bar in this COP27 very low at this time. I think that all Europe has to face this problem that actually, it's a problem actually, for many reasons, and you know, they step aside for the climate change things. In my point of view, this is the #1 problem, and it's going to be the #1 problem. No, I'm not talking about, of course, the COVID-19 this kind. I'm talking about climate change. As an environmental economist or energy economist, it's the #1, and I think that we are going to face many things in the next years. That's why my first question is, do we have time, or we have to, if we manage to go back in time and to make things different? I think that my personal point of view is that I put the bar very low. No policies actually to confront this subject. No big schemes, no money for investments, and I'm talking about investments, as Leoniki said, also for you know, for people that they don't know, for companies, for cities to adopt you know, green technologies and so on. This is my point of view. Sorry that I'm being optimistic, but I think that is the truth. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Gabriela. Maybe your point of view, and Rok also.
It is a hard topic. Of course, that there were some expectations regarding the COP climate change meeting. But I think only political declarations were spoken, and I think that the direct and concrete pathway were lack. For example, for my country, there weren't any debate on this event, not even on the climate change policy with the representative of this ministry, but also from the epistemic communities, because all the time my attention is on the epistemic communities, on the universities, which type of discourse the university adopt, because I think that really universities could be the engine for opening the doors from debates and also for improvement in different policy areas. As regard to the global south, also this topic is missing from our political discourse. We have some initiatives at the university level, if I'm thinking also to my university, and in Romania we have some good specialists, but I think that for the global south we need special attention, because when we are looking to Africa, we are seeing just resources and the way in which we could exploit, we as Europeans, these resources, but also we have some important project, and also we have a commissioner for the humanitarian aid, which aims with this project to help these regions from Africa to improve the quality of life. But of course that the cultural factors are very important, they cannot be neglected, and I think that there are a barrier for a good development of this project, not mentioning also the international context with a lot of influences from the big players from the global scale in these particular areas. This is my my insight. I'm not an expert on the global south, or my specialization is mainly on the European Union, but this is my vision.
Okay, thank you very much, Ruk. Maybe also experience from other continent you came from recently.
Yeah, so it's I have to say that, you know, looking at the outcome, you know, of this climate summit, you know, in Egypt, right? My question was the following. So, right, is United States in Europe, they try to be a cartel of good intentions for the global south, as Gabriela has mentioned, and also Konstantinos, very few concrete policy outcomes have resulted, right? B, what I sensed, what I have seen is that Germany, United States, and European Union in general, they have used this summit simply to try to mobilize developing countries against China, right? Once and for all, they should recognize China and Saudi Arabia are important trading partners for the global south, right? Now, European commissioners, President of the European Parliament, she may disagree, she may agree with, or she may be sympathetic or not sympathetic to the authoritarian regimes. They have their own flaws. At the end of the day, of course, they have human rights abuses, but for the global south, they are crucial. And on once and for all, my question was why, basically, if I try to look from the Australian perspective, why is European Union and United States are not willing to cooperate with China, with Saudi Arabia together to solve the problems of the global south, the drought, famines, inability to deal with natural disasters. Every natural disaster in the average country in the global south produces 7 times more economic damage than the one in the global north, right? So I'm afraid that what resulted from the climate summit was a plethora of nice, sweet little words that in the end of the day did not materialize into the concrete policy proposals. What I have sensed here is that the same mistake that the European Troika has done in Greece in 2008 has happened here. Everyone, basically, when we're looking at, for example, when Greece underwent the severe economic crisis, right? Everyone, every macroeconomist recommended expansionary macroeconomic policies, and the Troika went against it. We were like, so you're trying to push the economy into a free fall. And let's be honest, Greece today, in terms of GDP per capita, is still not at the level before the crisis in 2007, right? And do we talk about this? Well, You can in theory, but no one will listen, right? And it's a big problem and also a big backlash against it. And then there's if you try to look at the discussion in the European Union, why are developing countries so reliant on China? Now, if anyone has had any interaction or experience with the quality of and precision and the meticulousness of the policy analysis undertaken by the Bank of China, right? Now, it's quite rational that the developing countries are listening to China, because China doesn't blame anyone, right, for domestic political issues, for anything like that. And sometimes I have a feeling that as a global North, we have failed to act in the manner of collective responsibility to solve the pressing problems related to sustainable development, right, and ability to deal with crisis, with external shocks in the global South. And I'm not going to talk, of course, about the COVID-19 pandemic and the vaccine hoarding, right? But my impression is that why don't we, together with China, with Saudi Arabia, with Turkey, with South Africa, why don't we sit together? Why don't we invite Africa to join the G7? This is 2 billion people, right, are now excluded from the global voice. 2 billion people, right? They have absolutely no voice. And of course, ask United States, ask European countries whether they would be able to admit, for example, African Union to the G7. No one will, at the moment, there is no political will to do it, right? And this is also, becomes quite a severe issue, because at the end of the day, right, we have to be aware that the global middle class over time, now it's shifting from Europe to Asia, over time it will shift towards Africa, right? And maybe it's also in our collective interest, right, that instead of blaming each other with geopolitical games, right, with the forced, how to say, perceptions, right, and forced attempts to change these countries' regimes, maybe we will achieve greater change if we invite them to the global table and talk together about the problems, identify common solutions and cooperate, right? Because as social cooperation is the force of economic growth and the wealth of nations, what we actually teach to our students, in the same manner is social cooperation the force for global stability and peace, right? And I think that if we move in this direction, and instead of blaming these countries for why they deal with China and trying to mobilize them through such summits like as it happened in Sharm el-Sheikh, I think this would be a much nicer and basically more sustainable way. And also as the global North, or as the European Union, we wouldn't tarnish our reputation as much as we did, right? I thought that the Greek crisis was a warning, but apparently these politicians have learned very little.
Very much. Okay, Kleoniki is leaving, so thank you for your participation. We will continue, maybe a question for Tomasz and Konstantinos, or of course any other participants.
Can I add something that Rox said before? Okay. Before we are discussing in the break rooms about the World Economic Forum and the Energy Transition Index. If you have a look, I will find it and I will put it in the chat. If you see very carefully about what they are writing now, it's about 2021, if I remember correct. They are saying about, okay, we have a huge reduction in energy intensity in many countries, I don't know, 80%, but they are saying about China and, of course, East Asia region that, look, they have a lot of things to do. They also are talking about, which in my country now, as in many countries, I think they are using coal, or in my country are using lignite now because it's too cheap now to produce electricity. They're also saying about that the total amount of electricity generated from coal has been in not in downward trajectory, but in an upward trajectory over the past 10 years. We are talking about 10 to 2020, if I remember correct. I will find it and I will say to you, okay, we have good things, but we have also bad things. Okay, and somehow I agree with Rob that somehow have to defend all of this kind.
Okay, Rok, satisfied?
No, absolutely. No, thank you very much, Konstantinos. I also would share my thoughts with you, and I would fully and absolutely agree, right? And my idea was also, for example, that, I mean, some of the ideas that we've been contemplating like more recently is also when you look at the level of, if I go back to the question of data, right? I mean, especially for developing countries, I think this opportunity, right, should not be missed, right? Sometimes I have a feeling, even at International Monetary Fund or OECD, that high quality empirical analysis becomes a privilege. So scholars will analyze it, Harvard professors or anyone else for the developed mature economies, right? I think we should not discriminate. I think an economy like Zambia or like South Africa equally deserves an equal level of rigor, right, in the evaluation of the effectiveness of these policies, right? And also, it would, I think this was also part of Konstantinos' presentation before, right? So if you try also to look at the questions of circular economy and basically sustainable production, sustainable production and consumption, it would also be interesting to see, right, of course, when that's sometimes when we devise economic policies, right, to promote climate neutrality, it is important to be aware that what works, for example, in European Union or in a representative EU economy may not necessarily work elsewhere, right? So we have to bear in mind that Danny Roderick has written extensively about this years ago, on this context specificity in identifying binding constraints on climate neutrality and economic growth, right? Now, and also if I go back to the case of Greece, it has taken 8 years that the head of the European Central Bank has admitted that they have done a mistake. 8 years. Right, and I really hope that this will not happen again, of course, in a different context with the climate, with the pursuit of climate neutrality, right? But today, especially with this proliferation of activist movements, there is so much noise, right? Because I mean, now everything is moving to Twitter, to various social media, right? So maybe, of course, on one hand, this can serve as a tool to disseminate information, but it can also serve as noise. There's a lot of noise. We're being constantly bombarded by information, and that's why I think that a more bottom-up, cross-disciplinary scholarly co-regulation on a global level, not only among developed countries, right, I think would be a beneficial way forward, right? And also, for example, right, the thing is that also the European Union has to be aware that when they are making comments, because nowadays there is this FIFA World Cup, when they are making comments on Arab states about regime changes, please don't play with fire, right? Because such intentions, such comments, they can very easily backfire, and it may only happen that Saudi Arabia will not be willing to cooperate on global issues. I don't think this is what we want, right? We want to treat them as equal partners, right?
Okay, thank you, Rok. Then, if we take a look at the picture, I found it in the presentation. The presentation of Beatrice was with the text only, but in her paper, I saw this picture with the analysis of the progress regarding SDG goals. And it was interesting for me to find out that on the left, we have those goals related to our basic needs. If we take Maslow's hierarchy of pyramid of hierarchy, and on the right we have those related to infrastructure, economy, and like this. So maybe Tomasz and Konstantinos. So should we first accelerate in the worst few to catch those in the middle, or continue developing every path we have to follow in order to reach these goals? So how to proceed? This is the analysis for the last 5 years. And if we maybe can comment on this.
If I may start, so the city of Kranj, I like this. I mean, I did not come across to this picture yet, but we are following very much the SDG goals in the city of Kranj because it's a vital thing whenever you want to make a progress in the green area. The fact is that we are actually very much in, I would say, 3 special goals, and these are number 11, of course, as the city smart city concept as such. So number 11, number 9, and number 13. There are many others that we, I mean, directly or indirectly follow, but again, Slovenia is pretty much different than some other countries. So we are water abundant. We don't have such challenges that some other countries have. So in such a case, we have quite a lot of, I would say, advantages compared to the others. for the city of Kran, which is actually in the middle of the nature. So when we are talking about the 15-minute city, meaning whenever you go out, you need 15 minutes to come into the green area. For the city of Kran, we can say 10-minute city already or 5-minute city already. And whenever we have some discussions on the, let's say, city level, so in the city council, there is a lot of discussion among the councillors that this is something that it's not a big deal because we are green already, but it's not true. Even if we are green in Slovenia, when we have more than 50% of the country in the forest, we can do much more. Let's say in our downtown, in the city center, there's not even one tree available in the downtown, and this is something that we can always improve. And the discussions about being even more green is important. When we became a part of this 100 EU mission city of carbon neutral and smart by 2030, when we had a discussion with, let's say, Scandinavian countries, they don't think or discuss at all about carbon neutrality anymore. They discuss very much about being carbon positive by 2030 now. And it's just, you know, the mentality of those countries, the mentality of people, and positive motivation. So how to change this in our habits, according to Maslow, or according to just pure, I would say, pragmatism of mankind, how to actually live better, as I said. So live better, so at least as good as today or better, but with much less resources. And it's possible. Younger people do understand now this more than the others, and they try to live with that, and the change of habits is here. But when we, on a local governmental level, let's say as cities, somehow enable this to our customers, which is of course our citizens, and when the state actually does it on a top governmental level, then at least we show to the people where we are going to. And with the policies that European Commission does, we definitely can achieve better or quicker those goals. But as Roko also pointed out, it's actually very important that we have, let's say, one direction, that we keep the focus, that we follow those kind of, you know, the pathways, and we don't change those kind of goals, you know, from one day to another. So this 2030 is good because it's 2030 according to the SDG goals, as well as 2030 to the EU missions as such. But at the end of the day, I mean, by 2050, we need to be carbon neutral anyway, because the European Union signed the Paris Treaty, they signed the Kyoto, and in this respect, it's there, but it's far away from now. So in this respect, we like to be very, I would say, ambitious. We want to be avant-garde, and from there, in 2 terms of mayor, for example, in 8 years' time, a lot of things can happen. Although, as I said, I mean, the European Commission said you will most likely fail, so you'll not be able to actually achieve all those goals. But if you don't try, then you will not even come closer. And for us, I would say, according to these charts, where the significant progress was made, we see this goal number 9, and with this, the city of Kran is very active. And we believe definitely that the climate action needs to be there. This number 13 is key, I would say, our umbrella goal. And it can be achieved with a lot of action and a lot of, I would say, movements within the society. The tricky part is always with the governments, because you have too many decision makers. And I mean, for me, I used to be a CEO of 2 companies, and whenever you have more than 4 people, you know, in the board to make the decisions, so on the board meetings, then too many people or too many cooks will spoil the broth for sure. Because then, of course, you need to actually pay attention that you do the coordination, that you don't do overvote the others, and the more you need to negotiate, the less effect, the less effect can be done, or you need much more time to achieve it. So this is actually quite of a challenge for us in European Union. And with this, we just need to really follow the goal which is there. For us, we have really a mayor who wants to achieve goals, who is very business oriented, and there's no, he does not take no as an answer. So this is something that the whole team can actually grasp, and it's very motivational. But at the end of the day, you know, you think about, I don't know, really going green, going digital for the future. But when you want to apply for European funds, at the end of the day, you have to literally print out the form when you apply and sign it personally, so in hand analogically, which is a very counterproductive measure, I would say, because you need to start on a symbolic way all the time. And this is something that we want to really convey across also to our people.
Okay, thank you very much. Konstantinos, you also posted some documents.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
This is actually the last report from the European Union according to these sustainability goals. And actually it was the inspiration for our paper in ELF. And I think that we are in the same page with Beatrice, because our first finding is that, look, Europe is consisting of different clusters in many terms. This is the first finding. And then we say with Nikos, okay, if I title one, okay, let's say put something in, I don't know, in energy, it was 7 or 12, if I remember correctly. Is something going to happen to goal 12? And our findings, as Rock said before, it was not so wow, so wide, so significant. So I think that these sustainable goals are working independently somehow. So if I do something in a goal, I will not be benefiting in another goal. This is our findings from at country level. Okay, so somehow we are in the same page, and we cannot find if we are right in the relationship between the goals.
Okay, thank you very much. Would anybody else? Gabriela, you unmute.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome.
Yes. I would like to make a comment also on this figure, and I would like to stress the importance of the cultural elements or factors which could help the restructuring of the European Green Deal that I was talking about in the first workshop from today. The cultural factors in the terms of a culture of sustainability that our dissidents supposed to talk about, because this involves the strategic level. So how can we expect the local communities to find solution if from the strategic level, the highest level of the decision, we are just hearing some concepts, but also we don't have some explanation, because why is European Green Deal? What is its main aim? To improve our quality of life, our health, our resilience, and of course the competitiveness of the European Union and then of the member states. So the culture of sustainability will help the increasing of the quality of life. And I think that the European citizens need to hear this quite often. But I think this for Romania, because all the time we are hearing these economic figures. And in the analysis that I have made on the 10 years period from 2010 and 2020 on the data from Eurostat, I made an analysis on 15 indexes, and my results was that Romania don't have the capacity, the economic capabilities to implement the European Green Deal. Also, on the I expand the analysis on other member states from the Central European Union, and I found the same results. So that means that some parts of the European Union should find some common solution, but not in the sense of victimization or not in the sense of fragmentization. But I think that the European Green Deal needs some differentiation, because we are thinking of the industrialized states from the west, from the north. Then we have some states from the south part and the Baltic states. And then we have the central and south eastern member states who have also some cultural similarities, but also some economic similarities. So I think that if we want to follow these objectives of the sustainable development, we need this culture of sustainability to be exposed by the dissidents, and then we have to build the administrative capacities, but finding the similarities and leaving this local initiative to take the floor in order then to have some twinning programs and to enclose some partnerships. So this is my comment with these elements of culturals and also some strategic level involved.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other factors that influence the implementation of the European Green Deal, or could you stress some more? You already mentioned this culture, the economic basis, anything else?
From the political point of view, I think that the political will, but from the declaration of the national leaders, from the leaders of the European institutions, we see this political will, but I think that it's not enough for the European citizens, especially in this international context, coming after a post-pandemic crisis, having this crisis in the Eastern neighborhood. I think that we need this explanation in terms of the effects of this culture of sustainability that must come into the political debates, because from the Romanian media, all we can hear is the prices on energy. So we need this broader picture, and the citizens need to know what is this European Green Deal, how it will affect their lives, and how can all be involved in the increasing of the quality of life and reaching of this climate neutrality targets.
Okay, thank you very much. Tomasz, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, just a quick comment on that, what is needed. I mean, I would say really determination where we want to go, and the speed. The speed is something that probably we in European Union really need, and it's about, let's say, for the missions that are there, that are great, because now we have the missions there, and we know that there's going to be a lot of money also deployed. The challenge is we don't know how much money. And it's just, you know, it's going to happen, it will happen, we will see. And then it's just the case if we want to apply for these kind of things, or we want to finance this on our own. When we were last week or 2 weeks ago in Barcelona in the Smart City World Congress, when we were also as the city of Cannes invited on the second main stage together with the city of Dublin, presenting our achievements, just across to the stage, there was the main room or the main point where the Indian government was representing all their achievements, and they have pretty much the same or similar kind of a project, which is 100 cities. For every city in the world, for every urban issue, there is a successful replicable story in Indian smart cities. So they were actually inviting partners from all over the world to come to India. But what I want to point out is that there are already 707,000 projects in India for more than 23 billion euros deployed, and more than half of that was already exercised. So 12 billion euros, so into euros, more than half of that is deployed already. For us in European Union, we are discussing that there's going to be quite a lot of money, but the numbers are not there yet. And this is something that we lack. And if we want to be really ahead of the others, we really need to dream and play big, or otherwise we go home. And this is one of the very important takeaways. If we want to really be up and running, we need to be quick. Otherwise, we are the second league for sure.
Thank you, Tomasz. So, Konstantinos, we don't have time. You can maybe recap also regarding the time from our workshop. And of course, you raised your hand. So, please.
Okay, sorry for this, but Gabriela gave me, the idea. Actually, Gabriela described the current situation in Europe. We have many common things, we are many homogeneous in some terms, but very heterogeneous in other terms. For example, we can see preferences, we can see the European laws, but in production function or production technologies are completely different somehow. So having possible explanations, writing to our report with Nikos about why we have different clubs, I can imagine many explanations given, but I have to agree with Rocco that we have to prove that this explanation exists. For example, for energy efficiency, we can think about the phenomenon of energy stackiness or technology lock-in, because technologies are technology lock-in for energy efficiency. Or For productivity, we can think about the different structures of European economies, but actually we can see about different fuel mix, like Dejan said that look, IRS in Croatia is 70% from hydroelectric, for example. All these factors, of course, has to be proved by, in our case, Rob can understand me easily, by, you know, an econometric estimation. Then I can say, look, this is the effect, statistical significant, I'm okay with myself. Thank you very much. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Konstantinos. Maybe back to you, Tomasz. We know smart cities are basically part of public sector related to digitalization, and private sector also in Slovenia has problem with talents in ICT area. So even worse is probably in public sector, because good developers are being employed in other Western countries and so on. So how do you attract talents on green and digital transformation projects like Smart City?
Thank you, Nina. So for the direct answer is very hard, or easy on the other hand, because again, it's all about motivation, and money for sure is not something that would be an easy game here in the public sector, because we need to play according to the law and according to the rules that are there. And it's hard to actually give people more compared to what they do. And the fact is that we lack the ICT talents anyway. Slovenia itself has a really big challenge of the brain drain, and this is something that is definitely a direct challenge of the tax let's say regulation that we have in Slovenia. I sometimes call it tax terrorism, because it's a lot of people who go out is just because of this gross and net effect, and it's just crazy. And then another connotation of the public sector in Slovenia in a lot of cases is that, you know, you have people there that they don't want to work more than, you know, after till 3 o'clock, which is not true. I can say that I have a great team here, and it is possible because the mayor has a big vision, and he's quite, I would say, visionary, and you always want to follow the visionaries, right? You are a leader when you have the followers, and he actually persuaded us or attracted us from business, quite a few of us, to actually help him on the way to really make the city of Kranj, which is the third biggest city, a rock star again. You know, the city of Kranj in former Yugoslavia used to be like a Silicon Valley of former Yugoslavia because of, let's say, a lot of industry here in the area of IT, ICT, and electronics. That just faded away in the last 20-25 years. And Matjaž Rakovec, as our mayor, he said, okay, I'm from Kranj, I would like to make Kranj, let's say, great again. And this cannot be done over the night. This is one thing. But the second thing is that you can do this by attracting talents, not only into the public sector, but attracting talents to work in Kranj. Because half of, let's say, Kranj working people are commuting on a daily basis to Ljubljana and to the others, and it's a lot of CO2 emissions just on that. The question is, of course, we don't have these big companies, but not only big, but we want to have companies with high value added, and this is exactly what we are doing with the new business zone of almost 0.2 square millions area. But to attract additional, especially young people, we want to have 1,000 new apartments, new houses in the next 4 years, and we are on a good way to do it. So you put all things together. Attracting people means really, okay, the salaries are quite low, but you have a lot of possibilities to change this in the local and actually regional level. And let's say my direct takeaway here is just that I was in the business for the last 20 years. Now I'm 2 years in the public sector, and I tell to my people, let's say, that to my associates in the team, that okay, maybe you will not cash it in now, but all those new knowledge and new things that you will get to know, you will or you might then capitalize on that later on. And I have to say that this works, but on the other hand, when we want to employ, let's say, IT people, I can tell you about it. I mean, we started last year, and this year we repeated 6 times the tender for getting a new IT guy. We are always successful because we got the winner, right? But unfortunately, when it was needed to sign a contract, she or he said, sorry, but I will not sign because my current employer increased my salary by 50 or 70%. And this is literally so. So we just finished on Monday the seventh round. So hopefully the fairy tale number is going to be successful. But we tried now with another thing. So we have a few older people who are attracted. They achieved quite a lot in their lives, and they would like now to help come to work with us and help to the local society in a way that this is going to be good for our kids, for their grandchildren, and this is somehow the motivation for now. But unfortunately, you know, if you really want to do these big steps, because the money is definitely going to come, then you need really people, and we can do all kind of, you know, policies and so on. If you don't attract and keep the people that you will do as quick as possible, then you have a problem. Because currently we are pretty much dependent on the outside, let's say, outsourced things, which is good to some extent. The challenge is just that these people actually work on many different projects, and the focus is not there. And this is very much known. If you have pure people, they are more loyal, they are more focused, and definitely also quicker in the decision making as well as achieving goals.
Thank you. Gabriela also mentioned the cases of smart cities in Romania, and I'm asking both of you, so regarding this, for example, smallness of Slovenia, you said Kranj is relatively small. Slovenia with 2 million inhabitants is, for example, like Paris, or 10 times smaller as Shanghai, for example. So does it make sense to have only few smart cities in each country, or should, for example, Slovenia or Romania become case studies, so to form smart regions or smart states, and then be a role model for EU or other parts of the world? So we have this possibility. You mentioned possible agility, but 212 municipalities, it can be an obstacle, for example. Can you comment on this?
Yes, I think that each city, like each member state in the European Union and in the internal market, should go on its own rhythm. And I think that the cities that are more developed could be good models for good practice for another cities, because in the future, in the near future, I think all the cities supposed to be smart, but at different levels. And of course, a smart city will go to innovation city, because this is the right path, and then it will reach the climate neutrality city, because the cities that are in this initiative will sign a climate pact, and then they will become climate neutral cities. And the digitalization is, I think, an important step from the green transition that the public administrations, local public administration will have to pass. And also these cities will be a good model for the European citizens in the way of a proper conduit that will favor a good implementation of the European Green Deal, a certain behavior, a certain conduit, not only a digital one, but also in terms of a culture of sustainability that I was speaking about before.
Okay, Tomasz?
Yeah, if I can add on that, and maybe Nina, if you enable me to maybe share a screen, just one shot, if it's possible. Being small is an advantage here, I would say, because I mean, we are relatively small. I say we as Slovenians, we are a big nation, but small in numbers, and this is definitely a quick thing, because we like sport, we are Olympians and so on. So the fact is just that whenever we want to do some things, it's possible, because we don't need to have more and more decision makers when we do it. When we implemented our Smart Mlaka project, that was spotted by the JRC Center as well as the Gartner Institute in the States. So what we did, it was actually a Smart Mlaka project that somehow came across to the ears of European Commission. They did a deep dive on that, and they did really a research by the Joint Research Center of the European Union. So what we did at the end, we needed, of course, to actually share a lot of information with our colleagues from the European Commission, and the end result was just that what you see here. Hopefully you see the screen. So the benchmarking of the role of the public sector and location intelligence in smart cities and spaces. There's a QR code where you can download this particular publication that was published just in June this year. But the fact is that even we, as the city of Kranj with 60,000 inhabitants, we are now one of the 5 models how to make smart cities in European Union. Beside Guimarães in Portugal, Helsinki in Finland, Rotterdam in Netherlands, and Tallinn, Estonia. And this is something that it's achievable, it's possible, and we have a lot of now questions how we did it, and the whole concept, like how we did it, is actually described in that publication. So it was definitely not easy, but we tried it, and we did it not in a way to end up in this kind of publication, but it was actually then spotted on the top of European Commission. They said, okay, the whole concept was done from the bottom-up approach. So we did not go into the shop, and buy something from the shelf, but we actually developed ourselves on the local level, and this now can be deployed on the regional level also, and we actually follow that thing. The challenge that we have now is of course that the government of Slovenia does not have this concept how to actually do this smart city concept. Which is good or not. On one hand, it's not good because you don't get any governmental money, and consequently not also European money, because they don't grant you this kind of thing, especially if they don't understand it. But we did the way that if you have your own funds, then nobody can stop you, right? So the mayor said, we will invest so many million euros every year. We did it in that way, and now we have quite a lot of door open for financing all kinds of endeavors. And Slovenian approach probably in this way is going to be quite similar to the Scandinavian approach. Scandinavian countries waited, so that was a decade ago, waited for the big cities to actually come up with something, and then they said, okay, this is a governmental or state standard, and that it is. In Slovenia, probably it's going to be quite similar, but not just because they are so smart, but just because that's going to be the only way out, of course, if they want to really catch up. So in the city of Kranj, we are, as the first one in Slovenia, we have this public platform that it's there and up and running. And the worst scenario that can happen in Slovenia is that you have 212 municipalities coming up with 212 city or let's say municipality platforms, because those platforms will definitely not be able to be connected, and this is then going to be a terrible thing. So the idea is to get one, let's say, data pool, the data lake, and out of that a lot of information can be brought out for the businesses, for the smart startups, as well as and especially for the academia, so for the institutes and others, that they will get publicly available data and really bring up a lot of useful information out of that.
Okay, thank you, Tomasz. Rok, one question for you. Let's go back to macro picture. You were mentioning the degrowth movement. In your opinion, is this an obstacle or support or a cure even for the pursuit of sustainability-based policies?
Yeah, thank you, Nina. So, because I know that we are kind of running short of time, so I will try to be briefer, but hopefully not entirely non-exhaustive, right? If we try to look at the degrowth movement, right, I have actually tried to speak to a few of these proponents, right, of the ideas, because I essentially believe that we should talk, right, with people who are skeptical, right, discuss their ideas, right? Now then, I was actually stumbled by the fact that there are basically, they have ideas that the end of economic growth is a good solution, it will be carbonized, right? And then you ask these cheerleaders or these proponents, listen, ladies and gentlemen, okay, but how, right? Can you please show me a mechanism through which I know that going with GDP growth rate down to 0 will then lead to a climate, basically to the reduction of climate intensity by this and that amount. And this is, possibly it was just my impression, maybe I'm wrong in general, right? But the impression I got was that they were not willing to discuss any of these policies, right? So they wish what to do, you know, they know how to press the policymaker, but when we try to sit behind the table and say, please prepare me a policy proposal that simply says, in, let's say, 10 years' time, this is how we envision, this is how the degrowth people would actually envision the transition to a green energy, right? Essentially, I have a feeling that they don't want to discuss the particularities, only these big picture questions. And this is a problem because if as a policymaker, you're sympathetic to these ideas, but suppose you are, right, and then you don't know how to implement them, there might be more collateral damage coming out, right? So instead, I do think that big growth movement, going back to your question, Nina, I think it's more of a stumbling block. So I have a feeling that it's what their primary objective is mainly to provoke this discussion, but the problem is that basically looking at from the policy relevant perspective, I don't think that basically this serves as an enabler, right? Because then many people get, even I can tell in my own example, I teach at a business school, right? When I see young minds, first year undergraduate or graduate students at any level, right? I was surprised by the fact how many of them, right? In the last year of the graduate study, have never heard of sustainable development goals, right? Essentially, they like the ideas that, you know, what Tomasz has mentioned before about tax terrorism, you know, that taxing the rich is actually a great thing, right? Then you ask them, why? Do you think that basically why should a rich person be taxed 90 or 80% of their income on the margin, right? And you can see that there is very little, how to say, rational discussion behind it. Everything is driven by impulses, by what is seen on social media, right? And I think this has also a lot to do with the change in the curriculum, especially at business schools, right, that have proliferated degrowth ideas. For example, a lot of this has to do with the fact that universities and especially business schools, they try to be social activists and try to play the social activist role. I think this is a wrong approach, right? Their role should be educate students, teach them not only econometric, also other methods of research which are relevant, which allow us to do case studies, right? Identify binding constraints, identify policies, opportunities, go to countries like Romania, for example, if I go back to the presentation of Gabriela, find a city that has implemented a certain practice and evaluate the performance, right? Then we can talk, then we can learn something, right? But I have a feeling that there was this pressure for social activism, and it's not only a degrowth movement per se, there are many others, right? Has simply gone too far, right? And even some of university professors, right, I can tell my own colleagues, right, have lost complete ground. Now, basically, it's more important to show on Facebook, you know, how some people went running on the marathon for doing some good for humanity, and instead of doing good scholarly and productive work that could help not only developing countries but also others, right? So I really do think, as I try to do, I think a lot of things could change, right, if the curricula in business schools moved back towards to where it was, so with more quantitative courses, with more economics, social anthropology, classical courses, because they provide more valuable insights, right? Not only, I mean, for businesses or firms or municipalities, also for citizens, right, to form an active and informed participation in politics, right? Well, I mean, in kind of these political discourses about the discussion of policies.
Okay, thank you very much, Rok. I will finish with Konstantinos if there will be no additional questions in the chat, because I think we were quite complex and long today. So Konstantinos, can you maybe sum up few policy implications from this today's long event for policy measures? I'm really glad that we had young people also, as Rok mentioned, studying abroad, studying here, not hearing much here, but as we said in the workshop, we had students from Rotterdam School of Management. As Tomasz said, Rotterdam is a smart city. So we had students, Slovenian students also studying there, Malaysian students studying there, global business and sustainability. So things are moving, hopefully quick enough. So Konstantinos, could you please offer us few?
To sum up, difficult, yes. Nina, yes, okay. Difficult.
Try.
The first bullet is that we need data. As Rok said, more precise, more accurate, in-depth data, of course, going very, very, very down. This is the first. The second one that from this conference, let's say, is that we don't have to be as a scientist, as an economist, or isolated in our offices. We have to communicate with people. Okay, so I have to communicate, to speak with Rok, and or to Gabriela, or to Tomasz, which is from another sector, and probably to exchange knowledge, opinions, thoughts, and of course to cooperate. Okay. I think that those two are main policies. Now regarding the, because I'm working for many years in this kind of stuff with eco-efficiency and sustainability with other colleagues, also in Greece, also in foreigners in Italy and UK, it's, in my point of view, Europe is not a mess. It's divided in different, the traditional north-south paradigm exists, okay, in many terms. So we need the individual policies in order to undertake this kind of stuff. I will stop here because Rok is gonna talk now.
Rok.
Yeah, well, I would just like to concur with Konstantinos. So again, the need for, as also Konstantinos has mentioned, better, more insightful data, the need for better cooperation across scholars, across disciplines, across agencies, and also, as Konstantinos has mentioned, talk to the citizens. What I would add to this is that we have to stop making a discriminatory distinctions between East-West Europe, developed countries alike, and basically treat essentially the world as a whole, that different countries essentially need to move in the same, basically in the same direction towards climate neutrality, right? We should basically not be held back, you know, by the fact that some people don't like countries like China, like Saudi Arabia, right? I think they can be very constructive partners, right, in the cooperation towards the pursuit of climate neutrality. And also, I would what I would like to add is that if I try to look at case studies, right, I do think that the pursuit of case studies, right, and the quantitative approach to the case studies has a lot of approach, right, simply to try to illustrate which policies work and don't, right? Basically, apart from data disaggregation, basically creating a more data-rich environment, we also have to pay attention to the qualitative aspect, right? So across Europe, across the world, identify smart cities, you know, which cities have implemented different policies that also made a difference, maybe also that went against conventional views, right? Even if they are from a countries like, I don't know, Syria, maybe, why not, right? This, I think, will actually better enable us basically to not only, of course, to swim into the data-rich environment, but also, how to say, parse out the most insightful and informative lessons for the policymaker, and then also communicate these results to a policymaker in an effective way that is convenient, easy to understand, but again, at the same time, not overly simplistic, because that can easily lure everyone into a unnecessary populist discussion, so to say, right? And here I would like to, this would just be my minor thoughts.
Okay, thank you very much, Rok. I think it's time to finish here. I would really like to thank you all for fruitful debates, for nice presentations, and maybe we are the first one of the parts of the mosaic in this way, as you suggested, so that we were of different ages, different profiles, from different sectors with different experience, but with quite similar goals and ideas to go on this road to smart and sustainable Europe, as was the title of our event. I would really like to thank you all. I'm inviting you to check the webpage of Zavod 14 in a few days. There will be new materials, publications published, and of course the recording of this event will be available on YouTube, also on the page of Zavod 14. So thank you all. Hope we meet again, definitely with some of you, and have a nice end of the year, and best wishes on your journeys towards sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nina.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.